Hello and welcome. Tonight we follow the glowing trail of the legendary Firebird, a creature of mystery, wisdom, and radiant light. As we journey together through forests, rivers, mountains, and mystical chambers, I invite you to relax, observe, and let your thoughts flow with the story. If you enjoy this journey, please like the video and subscribe, and I would love it if you left a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. A quiet reminder that none of us are truly alone in the late hours. Tonight we will step softly into the past, following the daily lives of those who endured one of history's most trying times. Let us begin and allow the stories to unfold gently, like a slow, steady rhythm guiding you through the night. The story of the Firebird begins in the quiet, rolling hills of old Slavic lands, where forests stretch endlessly and rivers shine like silver threads beneath the morning sun. Villages lie tucked between hills and meadows, their timbered homes roofed with thatch, smoke curling gently into the sky. Life in these villages moves with a steady rhythm. The rising and setting of the sun marks work and rest, while the seasons shape planting, harvesting, and the simple chores that sustain life. Yet in these quiet spaces something extraordinary exists, a presence that seems almost beyond the ordinary, the Firebird. The Firebird is no ordinary creature. It glows with radiant feathers of red, gold, and orange, each catching the light in a way that seems almost alive. Even a single feather dropped silently onto the forest floor can illuminate the darkness, reflecting warmth and light into shadowed spaces. People speak of it with quiet awe, describing it as both a blessing and a challenge. Some say it brings fortune, others caution that its beauty may conceal hidden trials. Historians and folklorists suggest that the Firebird likely symbolized the sun, inspiration, and the promise of hope in times of darkness, a flicker of light that calls to the mind as much as the eye. Villagers rarely see the Firebird, yet its legend is ever present. Children listen with wide eyes to elders recounting its flights across distant forests, and adults carry these stories as both inspiration and gentle caution. The bird is never simply a creature to be captured. It represents challenge, desire, and the pursuit of something beyond the ordinary. These stories shape behavior, encouraging patience, careful observation, and reflection before action. The forests themselves seem to participate in the legend. Sunlight drifts through mist, glinting off dew-laden leaves. The rustle of small creatures and the bend of branches create rhythms in which the Firebird might appear at any moment. Some tales describe it perched atop a solitary tree, light spilling across the clearing, while others depict it fleeting across snow-covered plains, leaving a single glowing feather behind. Every story emphasizes the bird's elusiveness and the quiet attentiveness required to notice it. The Firebird's role is not purely fantastical. These tales carry subtle lessons. Folklorists note that such stories were intended to teach values, patience, courage, observation, and moral insight. The bird embodies both desire and consequence, reminding listeners that the pursuit of something extraordinary often illuminates the seeker's own character. Its light is both literal and metaphorical, guiding those who approach it with care and respect. For the villagers, the Firebird is present in their daily life, even when unseen. Its stories shape attention, imagination, and awareness. Children are taught to notice subtle changes in the forest, to observe light, sound, and movement, and to balance curiosity with respect. Adults are reminded to act thoughtfully and to maintain patience and empathy. Through these tales, the Firebird becomes a guide, shaping the rhythm of ordinary life with lessons of wonder, restraint, and quiet observation. Our hero is a young person at the edge of the village, someone who has grown up hearing the Firebird's tales and feeling its subtle pull on the imagination. The stories stir curiosity and courage, prompting reflection on what it means to seek, to learn, and to encounter the extraordinary. The Firebird is not merely an external goal but a symbol of inner growth, light, patience, and understanding in a world that is often shadowed by uncertainty. The hero spends hours wandering the fields and forests near the village, imagining glimpses of glowing feathers and listening for sounds that might belong to the extraordinary. Birds in ordinary colors flit through the branches, and small animals rustle the underbrush, yet the mind, guided by stories, discerns a hint of something unusual. This careful observation forms the first lessons of the journey: attention, patience, and awareness. Even the rivers seem alive with possibility. Sunlight on water, ripples that catch reflections, and the gentle movement of reeds along the banks all create a sense of magic. Villagers passing by the streams notice shadows of fish, occasional reflections of birds, and sometimes feathers drifting in currents. The Firebird story, woven into these ordinary sights, transforms perception, making even the quietest walks into a study of light, motion, and subtle beauty. Throughout the village, the Firebird is more than a tale, it is a presence in thought. Families gather around fires in the evening, sharing stories of its brilliance, elusiveness, and the heroes who have sought it. Its glowing feathers, the challenges it presents, and the lessons it imparts become embedded in the minds of listeners. Children imagine themselves in the forest, waiting quietly, learning patience. Adults recall the importance of thoughtful action, observation, and respect for forces larger than themselves. Historians note that such folklore had practical as well as reflective purposes. It embedded lessons for life, teaching moral restraint, cleverness, and awareness of one's surroundings. It reinforced communal values, linking imagination to everyday practice and reminding villagers of the delicate balance between desire and consequence. In this way, the Firebird guided both the mind and the behavior of those who believed in it, subtly shaping generations. As night falls, the village rests under a sky full of stars. Moonlight traces the edges of rooftops, rivers, and forests. In these quiet hours, the Firebird occupies the spaces between memory and imagination, inspiring dreams and reflections. The young hero lies awake, listening to the wind and imagining glowing feathers in the forest. Questions form gently in the mind. How does one approach something so beautiful and elusive? What does it mean to pursue that which cannot be held easily? Even as the night deepens, the forest seems to breathe and wait. Shadows lengthen and mingle with moonlight, streams glimmer like silver threads, and distant mountains loom softly under starlight. The Firebird, though unseen, leaves traces in the imagination, a flicker of color in thought, a quiet sense of possibility. Its legend shapes the rhythm of dreaming and waking alike, inviting attention to wonder hidden in the ordinary. By the time the first light of dawn appears, the hero is ready. The call to adventure is quiet but insistent, woven into the stories, the landscape, and the longings of youth. The journey, beginning in imagination, is a delicate preparation, teaching observation, patience, and respect for the world. The Firebird is a teacher, a guide, and a symbol of illumination, calling those willing to notice and listen. As the morning mist curls around the treetops, sunlight glints across streams and forest floors. Animals stir, birds call, and the hero feels the pull of possibility. The Firebird is more than a bird. It is a spark of hope, a test of curiosity, and a reflection of the extraordinary that lies just beyond the ordinary. The hero's journey is poised to begin, guided by stories, imagination, and the quiet lessons of the glowing, elusive Firebird. The village lay nestled between the rolling hills, its timbered houses roofed with straw, and smoke curling lazily into the morning sky. Small dirt paths connected the homes, winding past gardens where vegetables grew in neat rows, past pens holding goats and chickens, and over small wooden bridges that crossed sparkling streams. Life moved slowly, measured by the rising and setting of the sun, and by the work that sustained families, tending animals, chopping wood, fetching water, preparing meals, and repairing homes. Yet within this ordinary rhythm, the whispers of the Firebird stirred curiosity and wonder. Our hero awoke to the faint light of dawn spilling through a narrow window, the smell of smoke and bread wafting from the hearth. The soft clatter of a goat outside, the low bleating of sheep, and the distant call of a bird accompanied the start of the day. Children played along the paths, laughing quietly, while adults moved with purpose, carrying tools or baskets of produce. The village seemed peaceful, orderly, and familiar, yet the stories of the Firebird added an invisible layer of mystery that seemed to hang in the air. The hero's family lived in a modest house on the edge of the village. Outside, the garden was tidy, full of cabbage, onions, and root vegetables, with herbs planted along the edges. Chickens wandered freely, and a goat bleated softly near its pen. Inside, the smell of freshly baked bread mingled with the warmth of the hearth. The hero helped with chores, collecting eggs, sweeping floors, and carrying water from the nearby stream. Yet the mind often wandered to the glowing feathers of the Firebird and the forests that stretched beyond the village boundaries. Villagers spoke of the Firebird in quiet tones, careful not to disturb ordinary life with too much excitement. Some told stories of travelers who had glimpsed it fleetingly, describing the bird's radiant feathers and the strange fortune or challenge that followed its appearance. Others treated the stories as cautionary, suggesting that desire must be tempered with patience and respect for the hero. These tales were a mixture of instruction and inspiration, guiding thoughts and stirring imagination in equal measure. The rhythm of daily life continued. Men and women moved to the fields, sowing seeds or tending crops. Children chased one another between houses and along the edges of gardens. Animals wandered through pens and pastures. Yet amidst this quiet order, the hero noticed things that others might overlook. The way sunlight struck the surface of the stream, glinting like scattered gold. The soft shimmer of dew on leaves in the morning. The rustle of small creatures among the undergrowth. These observations were subtle, but they awakened a sense of attentiveness and wonder, lessons quietly taught by the Firebird stories. Markets were held at the center of the village on certain days, small but lively affairs where people traded goods, shared news, and exchanged stories. The hero wandered among the stalls, noticing the worn wooden tools, the colorful bundles of herbs, the baskets of fruit, and the simple clay pots used for cooking. Merchants spoke in low voices of distant lands, and children listened with wide eyes, their imaginations filling in the spaces between words. Even in this small, ordinary market, the presence of the extraordinary seemed close, waiting in glimmers of color, in shadows, and in fleeting glimpses of light. The hero's friends, children of similar age, often talked of games, small adventures in the surrounding forests, or local pranks. Yet even in their laughter and play, the stories of the Firebird lingered. They imagined glowing feathers caught on branches, distant flashes of red and gold darting through trees, and the idea that something magnificent might exist just beyond the edge of their village. These ideas were not frightening. They were invitations to observe, to wonder, and to think beyond what was immediately visible. Meals were simple but nourishing: bread baked in clay, ovens, porridge made from grains, fresh vegetables from the garden, and occasionally milk from goats. During these quiet moments, elders might speak softly of the Firebird, recounting tales of heroes who had glimpsed it, the lessons they had learned, and the virtues they had developed. Patience, observation, courage, and reflection were emphasized, more important than speed or force. The young hero listened carefully, absorbing these lessons like sunlight, and imagining what it might be like to see the radiant feathers in the forest beyond the village. The village also had its rhythms of work and rest. Afternoons were filled with tasks: repairing fences, tending animals, carrying water, and gathering firewood. Shadows lengthened as the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting fields and hills with warm, muted colors. Streams reflected the changing light, birds sang quietly, and a gentle breeze stirred leaves and grasses. The Firebird's stories seemed alive in these moments, teaching that the world contained layers of beauty, complexity, and subtle challenge waiting to be noticed by those who paid attention. At the edge of the village, near a small copse of trees and the beginning of the dense forest, the hero often wandered in solitude. The tall grass, the soft rustle of leaves, and the glimmer of sunlight on water created a sense of quiet magic. It was here, away from the central paths and bustling activity, that curiosity grew. The hero thought of glowing feathers, of light reflected in streams, of shadows moving with a quiet intelligence. These reflections were not merely daydreams, they were preparation for the journey to come, an early practice in observation, patience, and understanding of the world beyond the ordinary. Evenings brought a soft hush to the village. Smoke from hearths mingled with the cool air. Stars began to appear in the sky, and the gentle call of owls echoed through the trees. Families gathered for simple meals, quietly conversing about the day. The hero listened attentively, remembering stories of the Firebird shared in previous nights. These moments of calm reflection, paired with the wonder of the tales, nurtured both imagination and resolve. The Firebird's lesson was beginning to root itself. Beauty and challenge were intertwined, and attentiveness to the small details of life could reveal extraordinary truths. The village's nightly routines reinforced observation and reflection. Tools were cleaned, animals were secured, and fires were tended. Children were guided gently towards sleep, often encouraged to recall stories of heroes and the Firebird. The hero, lying awake with eyes tracing the shadows on the walls, thought of the forests beyond the village, of sunlight filtering through mist, and of radiant feathers glimmering in secret clearings. Reflection and imagination became intertwined with daily experience, cultivating the quiet readiness required for adventure. Historians note that such folklore served as subtle preparation for life's challenges. Stories of radiant, elusive creatures like the Firebird instilled patience, careful observation, and ethical reflection. They encouraged young listeners to notice the world around them, to think before acting, and to value the extraordinary while maintaining respect for it. For the young hero, these lessons were becoming practical as well as imaginative, laying the foundation for the journey that would soon begin beyond the familiar village boundaries. By the close of the day, the village was bathed in muted twilight, shadows stretching across fields and rooftops. The hero paused at the edge of the garden, looking toward the distant forest. The Firebird, though unseen, lingered in imagination, a promise of wonder, of challenge, and of growth. In that quiet moment, the village itself seemed to hold its breath, preparing the hero for the adventure that lay ahead, where observation, patience, courage, and curiosity would be tested and rewarded in ways yet unimagined. The Firebird's influence was subtle yet persistent, even in the mundane tasks of village life, fetching water, tending animals, preparing food. The hero noticed small wonders, light reflecting on dew, shadows moving with the wind, patterns in the bark of trees. These moments became exercises in attention, quietly teaching the virtues that would guide the hero on the path to encounter the radiant, elusive bird. As night fell completely, the village rested under a sky glittering with stars. The soft sounds of nocturnal creatures, the gentle ripple of streams, and the whisper of the wind among trees created a world rich with sensory detail. The Firebird's story lingered, a thread connecting the ordinary to the extraordinary, teaching that even small acts of observation, thoughtfulness, and curiosity could lead towards something magnificent. In this way, the hero's village was not only a place of daily life, but also the starting point of a journey of imagination, preparation, and growth. Each observation, each story, and each quiet reflection built the foundation for the adventure that lay ahead, an adventure that would carry the hero into forests, across rivers, and into the heart of mystery and wonder, all guided by the luminous and elusive Firebird. The sun rose slowly over the village, casting a warm, golden glow across the hills and fields. Morning mist clung to the trees at the forest's edge, curling in delicate spirals as the wind passed through. The hero stood at the boundary where the familiar paths of the village met the dense, untamed wilderness beyond. Today, unlike any other, carried a sense of possibility, an unspoken invitation to step beyond the ordinary into a world of quiet mystery and subtle challenge. Stories of the Firebird had always been part of the hero's life, whispered at dawn and dusk, woven into the rhythm of daily chores, and carried in the mind like sunlight in a small enclosed room. Yet now the tales seemed to breathe differently, urging observation, patience, and courage. What had once been imagination now hinted at reality, a distant glow of feathers caught in the morning light, the rustle of unseen creatures in the underbrush, a sense that something extraordinary awaited those who noticed carefully. The hero took a deliberate step forward, feeling the soft earth beneath their feet, smelling the dampness of moss and soil, and listening to the gentle calls of birds hidden among branches. Each step brought awareness, the way sunlight reflected on the edges of leaves, the movement of small animals through fallen leaves, and the subtle shimmer of dew on spiderwebs strung between branches. In these quiet observations, the first lessons of the adventure were already unfolding: attention to detail, patience, and mindfulness of the surroundings. At the edge of the forest, the hero paused. The village lay behind, a tapestry of smoke, gardens, and timbered houses. Beyond it, the forest stretched, dense and mysterious, shadowed in areas where sunlight struggled to penetrate. Here, in this threshold between the ordinary and the extraordinary, the hero felt the gentle weight of anticipation. What did it mean to pursue the Firebird? Could such a creature exist beyond the stories of elders, or was it a reflection of imagination, guiding lessons in courage, observation, and patience? The hero's hand brushed against the bark of a nearby oak, rough and solid under fingertips. A faint glimmer, barely perceptible, danced across a leaf in the morning light. Was it a reflection, a feather, or simply imagination? It did not matter. The mind learned to notice, to pause, and to reflect. Each small movement, each sound, each shift in light became part of the teacher's lesson. In these quiet moments, the first step of the journey was not measured in distance but in attentiveness, and the hero felt a subtle shift, as though the forest itself were breathing and waiting. Walking deeper into the forest, the hero noticed patterns of light and shadow. Sunlight filtered through the branches, forming intricate designs on the forest floor. Birds called in the distance, their songs melodic yet fleeting. A gentle breeze carried scents of pine, moss, and damp earth. With every step, the world seemed layered with hidden detail, a place where the ordinary and extraordinary existed simultaneously. Historians suggest that such storytelling, in teaching children to notice the natural world, cultivated careful observation and patience, skills essential for survival, and insight in both real and imagined journeys. The hero paused beside a small stream, watching the water move over smooth stones. Light glimmered along the surface, casting reflections that shifted with the gentle flow. It was here, in the stillness of observation, that the first sense of the Firebird's presence emerged, a fleeting flicker of red gold, an impossible shimmer that might have been sunlight or the promise of something extraordinary. The mind held the image carefully, neither rushing nor dismissing it, learning to inhabit the space between expectation and wonder. Stories had long spoken of challenges accompanying the Firebird. It was not merely a creature of beauty, but a test of virtue and patience. The hero, moving quietly along the forest floor, felt a growing understanding that observation alone would not suffice. Courage, resilience, and careful thought were necessary companions. In each rustle of leaves, each glint of light, each whispered sound of hidden animals, the lessons of folklore manifested as tangible experiences, guiding behavior, reflection, and choice. As the day progressed, the forest opened into a small clearing. Sunlight poured through gaps in the trees, illuminating the moss-covered stones and fallen branches. In this quiet space, the hero noticed a feather, red and gold, lying as if it had been placed by an unseen hand. The feather shimmered gently, catching the light in a way that seemed alive. Heart quickening, the hero reached out and picked it up, feeling its warmth and radiance. This small, luminous object was a tangible invitation, a call to adventure, and a promise that the extraordinary lay within reach for those who approached with care and respect. The hero's mind reflected on the lessons of the village and the elders' stories. The Firebird was never simply a prize. It was a mirror of values: patience, observation, courage, and the willingness to pursue knowledge beyond what was easily visible. Holding the feather, the hero felt a quiet connection to every tale ever told, every moment of attentive observation, and every reflection on the beauty and elusiveness of the world. The journey was no longer abstract, it had begun in earnest, guided by the luminous, radiant bird. The forest seemed to respond to the hero's attention. Small movements of animals, the shifting play of light on leaves, and the soft whisper of the wind became part of a larger rhythm, a subtle conversation between the observer and the environment. Historians note that stories like these often prepared listeners for real challenges: careful observation, patience, ethical reflection, and the understanding that pursuit of the extraordinary is a delicate process, requiring respect for forces larger than oneself. As afternoon shadows lengthened, the hero pressed further into the woods. Each step was deliberate, each sound noted, each glimmer of color observed. In the distance, a faint glow seemed to flicker between trees. Was it the Firebird, or merely the sunlight on golden leaves? The question mattered less than the practice, the cultivation of attentiveness, the quiet reflection, and the deepening of patience and courage. By late afternoon, the forest thickened, twisting roots, uneven ground, and the subtle murmur of streams created both challenge and fascination. The hero's senses were fully engaged. The cool scent of moss, the sound of branches bending gently, the patterns of light and shadow. In this immersive environment, the Firebird's lessons were fully realized. Observation, patience, courage, and respect for the world were no longer abstract principles. They were lived experiences, shaping every step, thought, and breath. Evening approached slowly, the forest bathed in muted gold and orange light. The hero paused on a small rise, looking back toward the village. The homes lay quiet, smoke curling gently, gardens still and orderly. Ahead, the forest stretched darkly, yet hints of glowing feathers and reflections of light suggested the presence of the Firebird. The call to adventure was real, persistent, and gentle, a reminder that the extraordinary exists alongside the ordinary, visible only to those willing to notice, reflect, and act with care. As twilight deepened, the first stars appeared through the canopy, faint points of light in the deepening sky. The hero found a place to rest, observing the movement of the forest and the subtle shimmer of a distant feather. These quiet reflections were as much a part of the journey as any physical steps taken. They reinforced understanding, patience, and the ability to notice the extraordinary in subtle, fleeting forms. By nightfall, the hero was settled beneath a large oak, listening to the soft calls of nocturnal animals, the gentle rustle of leaves, and the distant whisper of wind. The glowing feather lay carefully placed nearby, a reminder of the Firebird's presence and of the careful, attentive engagement required to pursue it further. Each sound, movement, and reflection became a lesson in observation, courage, and mindful patience. Historians note that folklore like the Firebird's was designed not only to inspire but to prepare young listeners for life's challenges. Courage, observation, patience, and ethical reflection were cultivated in these stories, shaping both imagination and behavior. For the hero, these lessons were now tangible. Each step in the forest, each glance at shimmering feathers, each quiet moment of reflection reinforced the values that would guide the journey ahead. The forest at night held a quiet magic. Moonlight filtered through the leaves, casting long shadows across the forest floor. Streams glimmered faintly, and the soft flicker of distant feathers suggested movement just beyond perception. The hero remained calm, alert, and reflective, feeling the first true connection to the Firebird's world. Observation, patience, and courage were now intertwined with wonder, creating a rhythm that would carry forward through the coming trials. In this way, the call to adventure was complete. The hero, once confined by the ordinary boundaries of village life, had stepped into a world where the extraordinary was tangible, present in subtle glimmers, fleeting sounds, and luminous feathers. The journey had begun, guided by stories, reflection, and the quiet but persistent presence of the Firebird. The path ahead would require attentiveness, patience, and courage, and the hero's first steps were already shaping the mind and heart for the challenges to come. The forest had grown denser, shadows stretching long as the late afternoon sun filtered through the thick canopy. Every rustle of leaves and shift of light seemed imbued with possibility. The hero moved carefully, aware that the forest was alive in ways both subtle and profound. Sunlight caught on dew-laden branches, reflecting soft glimmers like tiny stars. The air smelled of pine, earth, and the faint sweetness of forest flowers hidden beneath the underbrush. Every step brought a sense of heightened awareness. The hero noticed the movement of small animals, the whisper of leaves in the breeze, and the distant, faint glimmer of light on a far-off branch. It was here, in the quiet attentiveness of the forest, that the first real hint of the Firebird appeared. A sudden flicker of red and gold, brighter than sunlight alone could create, darted between the branches. It was quick, almost imperceptible, yet undeniable, a presence that demanded attention, patience, and calm observation. The hero froze, heart beating softly but steadily. The world seemed to hold its breath. Was this truly the Firebird or a trick of light on the leaves? The mind paused to consider, reflecting on the stories of elders, the lessons of the village, and the subtle exercises of observation practiced since childhood. Patience, observation, courage, and reflection were all required, and the hero inhaled deeply, grounding in the moment. For long minutes the hero watched as the glimmer moved, darting from branch to branch, weaving through the trees. Each glimpse was fleeting, impossible to fully capture, yet vivid enough to leave a lasting impression. Historians and folklorists suggest that such descriptions in tales were designed to cultivate sustained attention and careful perception, teaching listeners that extraordinary beauty is often elusive and must be approached with respect and mindfulness. The hero moved quietly, adjusting steps to avoid disturbing the forest floor, listening to the faint creak of branches and the soft patter of small creatures. The glimmer of the Firebird appeared again, closer now, revealing the full radiance of its feathers, deep red fading into gold, streaks of orange, catching the light like flowing fire. The creature was magnificent, both real and symbolic, embodying beauty, challenge, and the subtle moral lessons woven into the folklore. With each careful observation, the hero began to recognize the Firebird's behavior, moments of pause on branches, rapid flickers of movement, and a pattern of appearing and disappearing as though testing the attention of those who followed. It was a test not of strength, but of patience and perception. Every flicker reinforced the lessons of the village, the elders' stories, and the quiet reflections during solitary walks along streams and fields. The hero remembered the glowing feather found earlier, and placed it gently into a small pouch, a tangible token of the journey. Holding the feather reminded the mind to remain calm and attentive. Desire alone was insufficient. The pursuit required care, observation, and a respect for the living rhythm of the forest and the creature within it. With these thoughts, the hero moved slightly closer, keeping low and silent, following the trail of subtle light. As evening approached, the forest was bathed in warm, muted tones. The glimmer of the Firebird became more pronounced against the dimming light. A soft rustle of wings, the flicker of feathers, and the almost imperceptible hum of energy filled the air. The hero paused to breathe slowly, noting the patterns in the forest, the sway of branches, the glint of streams, the subtle shimmer of distant moss. These observations became as important as the creature itself, cultivating awareness, patience, and understanding. A faint breeze carried scents of pine, moss, and damp earth. The hero's senses were fully engaged, every sound and movement carefully registered. And then, for a brief, astonishing moment, the Firebird perched within a small clearing, its feathers glowing like molten gold. The bird's gaze met the hero's, and in that instant the world seemed to hold a delicate, suspended balance. Time slowed, and the hero felt a quiet understanding. This encounter was as much about inner calm, observation, and reflection as it was about seeing the Firebird itself. The creature's beauty was hypnotic. Feathers flickered with every subtle movement, light spilling across the clearing in gentle, mesmerizing patterns. The hero noted the elegance of its form, the rhythmic sway of its tail, the subtle glint in its eye. This first encounter was not about capture or possession. It was an invitation to study, to reflect, and to deepen the lessons of patience and awareness cultivated since childhood. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Every detail of the Firebird was observed, the way light played across feathers, the gentle shifts in posture, and the rhythm of breath and movement. The hero remained calm, quiet, and fully present, practicing the art of observation, the patience of waiting, and the subtle interplay between presence and desire. Historians note that such narrative exercises in folklore reinforced mindfulness, teaching listeners that true insight comes from careful, deliberate attention rather than impulse. The hero reflected on the journey so far, the village, the morning walks, the small feather, and the lessons of observation and patience. Each step had been preparation, cultivating awareness and reflection. The Firebird was not merely a creature of myth. It was a teacher, guiding through presence, light, and behavior. The encounter, while breathtaking, was equally a lesson in restraint, mindfulness, and ethical engagement with the world. As twilight deepened, the Firebird moved with sudden grace, rising into the air and disappearing into the upper canopy. The hero remained seated, breathing slowly, heart steady, eyes following the last glimmers of color as they faded into shadow. Though the bird had vanished, the encounter left a lasting impression, a sense of calm, awe, and understanding, reinforcing the subtle lessons woven through every step of the journey. The forest around the hero seemed alive in response to this experience. Small animals rustled quietly, leaves swayed in the evening breeze, and the faint glint of distant light reminded the mind of the Firebird's continued presence. Reflection was now as important as observation. The lessons of patience, courage, and awareness were to be carried into the next stages of the adventure. Night fell fully, the forest bathed in soft silver light from the rising moon. Stars glimmered through the canopy, and the quiet hum of nocturnal life created a serene background. The hero settled beneath a sturdy tree, placing the glowing feather carefully nearby. In the quiet, thoughts wandered over the encounter, reflecting on the Firebird's symbolism, lessons, and the balance between desire and respect. Each sensation, the cool breeze, the gentle sounds, the faint glow, reinforced mindfulness and awareness cultivated through the journey. Historians note that encounters like these in folklore were often designed to teach lessons of insight, patience, and courage. The Firebird represents both challenge and guidance, beauty and restraint, reward and reflection. The hero's first encounter was not a conquest, but a step in learning the virtues that underpin pursuit, discovery, and understanding. Each observation was a practice in reflection, each movement a reinforcement of calm attentiveness, and each fleeting glimmer a lesson in perception. The hero drifted towards sleep beneath the moonlit canopy, the feather glowing softly nearby. Dreams were filled with radiant light, the flicker of feathers, and the soft patterns of motion in the forest. Awareness and reflection intertwined with imagination, reinforcing the understanding that the journey with the Firebird was as much internal as external, a path of patience, mindfulness, courage, and discovery. Dawn broke slowly, spilling pale gold across the forest floor. Mist hung between the trees, curling gently around roots and moss-covered stones. The hero awoke beneath the same sturdy tree, the glowing feather from the first encounter still resting carefully nearby. Its radiance seemed softer now in the dim morning light, a quiet reminder that the Firebird had not disappeared, but was still present, guiding observation, patience, and courage. The forest was alive with subtle movements, leaves trembling with the soft breeze, small animals scuttling across undergrowth, and birds calling to one another from hidden branches. The hero rose carefully, mindful of every sound, scent, and light pattern, knowing that the pursuit of the Firebird demanded both attentiveness and respect. Today was not about haste. It was about careful engagement with the world, noticing the small details that might reveal the presence of the radiant, elusive creature. The first steps of the chase were deliberate. The hero moved quietly along the forest paths, scanning for hints of color, glimmer, or movement. Each subtle shift of light on leaves, each rustle of branches could indicate the firebird's path. Historians suggest that such attention to the environment mirrors the lessons embedded in folklore. Careful observation, mindfulness, and patience were cultivated in listeners long before the story's symbolic meaning fully revealed itself. After some time, the hero paused beside a gently flowing stream. Water rippled over smooth stones, reflecting dappled sunlight. In the ripples, a flash of red and gold flickered briefly. Perhaps sunlight, perhaps the glimmer of the firebird's feathers. The hero crouched, observing patiently, not rushing, and waited. Minutes passed. The forest seemed to exhale slowly around the hero, and in the quiet patience the first signs of the chase revealed themselves. Subtle disturbances in the underbrush, fleeting flashes of feathered color, and the occasional shimmer on distant leaves. The hero moved again, following the pattern. Each step was calculated, gentle, avoiding unnecessary noise that might disturb the environment. Moss compressed softly underfoot, twigs snapped faintly, and the distant calls of forest birds punctuated the quiet. The firebird's behavior was deliberate, almost playful, darting ahead, revealing glimpses, retreating into shadows. This was not merely pursuit, it was a dialogue of attention, a test of observation, and a subtle lesson in patience and perseverance. By late morning, the forest opened into a sun-dappled clearing. The hero stopped, heart steady, eyes scanning the trees. The firebird appeared briefly atop a high branch, tail feathers glowing like molten fire in the filtered light. It tilted its head, observing the hero, then flicked its wings and disappeared further into the trees. The chase had begun in earnest, not as a hurried pursuit, but as a patient, deliberate engagement with a being that demanded awareness, respect, and careful action. The hero followed, moving deeper into unfamiliar terrain. Twisting roots, uneven ground, and hidden streams tested balance and attention. Each obstacle became a lesson in observation, noticing which stones were stable to step on, how branches might sway under weight, and how sunlight and shadow could reveal movement in the distance. The forest was alive, a complex ecosystem, and the hero's awareness expanded with every careful step. As midday approached, the hero paused to rest beneath a broad oak. The gentle breeze carried the scent of pine, wildflowers, and damp earth. Tiny creatures moved quietly in the undergrowth, and the soft shimmer of distant feathers suggested the firebird's continued presence. In this moment, reflection became as important as movement. Patience, courage, and mindfulness were as much about observing the internal state of the hero as about following the external hints of the creature. In the quiet of the clearing, the hero considered the lessons from previous encounters. The firebird was not merely a prize to be captured, but a guide, a teacher of virtues embedded in folklore, the cultivation of patience, careful attention, ethical action, and the understanding that beauty and challenge often intertwine. The feather held in the pouch from the first encounter was both a tangible symbol and a reminder that success required thoughtfulness, not force or haste. The pursuit continued through dense woods, small streams, and over gentle hills. Glimpses of radiant feathers appeared intermittently, like flickers of sunlight or fire caught in leaves. Each glimpse reinforced the lessons of careful observation, awareness of surroundings, and the patience to follow subtle cues rather than impulsively rush forward. The hero noticed the smallest details, the glint of dew on moss, patterns in bark, the way sunlight shifted across stones. Each observation sharpened senses and deepened understanding. As afternoon stretched on, a faint clearing appeared in the distance. Sunlight spilled through the trees in warm streams, illuminating patches of grass and low shrubs. The firebird appeared again, briefly perching on a fallen branch, its feathers glowing vividly. The hero approached cautiously, mindfully, keeping attention on every sound, shadow, and movement. This was the first true test of discernment, observing without disturbing, following without rushing, and maintaining calm focus under subtle challenge. Minutes passed in quiet observation. The firebird's gaze seemed to pierce the space between them, and the hero realized that understanding the creature required more than vision. It required empathy, respect, and a sense of harmony with the surrounding world. This was not a confrontation, but a delicate exchange, a silent acknowledgement of shared presence in the forest. Historians of folklore suggest that these narrative devices were designed to teach young listeners about empathy, patience, and thoughtful engagement with forces beyond immediate comprehension. The chase continued into early evening. Shadows lengthened, and the forest was painted in muted golds and purples. Streams glimmered softly in the fading light, leaves shimmered with dew, and distant branches reflected subtle glints of red and gold. The hero noticed patterns in the Firebird's movements, moments of pause, deliberate flight, and flickering displays of feathers. Each movement became a study in attention, patience, and reflection. The pursuit was not merely physical, but also mental and emotional, cultivating awareness and balance in the observer. By twilight, the hero emerged into a small glade where the Firebird lingered atop a low branch. Its feathers radiated softly, illuminating the surrounding grass and moss. The hero crouched, observing every subtle movement. The Firebird tilted its head, shifting its glowing plumage, then flicked its wings, scattering faint sparks of light. This moment marked the beginning of deeper lessons, recognition of subtle cues, understanding rhythm and timing, and appreciation of beauty intertwined with challenge. Night fell fully, as the hero set up a small, quiet resting spot nearby. The Firebird disappeared temporarily, but its presence lingered in the faint shimmer of feathers and the subtle shifts in light across the glade. Listening to the gentle rustle of leaves, the distant calls of nocturnal creatures, and the soft murmur of wind, the hero reflected on the chase. Patience, observation, courage, and careful reflection were now intertwined with every breath, every movement, and every thought. As sleep approached beneath the moonlit canopy, the hero's mind wandered over the day's lessons, the fleeting glimpses, the shimmering feathers, the patterns of movement, and the silent dialogue of attention and patience. These reflections were as vital as any physical progress in the pursuit. The Firebird, though elusive, had already taught much the value of careful observation, calm reflection, and ethical engagement with the world, principles that would guide the next stages of the adventure. Historians suggest that the repeated patterns of pursuit and observation in folklore were designed to embed virtues of patience, courage, and mindfulness. The chase of the Firebird, though magical in narrative, mirrors human experiences of learning, growth, and ethical awareness. For the hero, each observation, reflection, and subtle decision built a foundation not only for eventual success, but for internal development of character, insight, and resilience. The night deepened, moonlight shimmering across the forest floor. The hero lay quietly, listening to the soft symphony of the nocturnal forest, aware of the subtle presence of the Firebird somewhere nearby. Dreams intertwined with memory, flashes of feathers, gentle rustles, and the play of light across branches. Even in rest, the lessons of patience, observation, courage, and reflection continued, preparing the hero for the next day's pursuit, and for encounters yet to come. The following morning arrived quietly, with pale sunlight filtering softly through the forest canopy. Mist clung to the lower branches, curling around trunks and roots like delicate threads of smoke. The hero rose from beneath a sturdy oak, stretching lightly, aware of the lingering presence of the Firebird somewhere deeper in the forest. Today, the pursuit would take on new challenges, subtle trials woven into the rhythm of the forest itself, designed to test observation, patience, and courage. The first test emerged almost immediately. A fallen tree blocked the path, moss-covered and slick with moisture. The hero paused, considering the safest approach: step carefully across the trunk or find a way around. Each option required careful observation: the firmness of the moss, the stability of hidden roots, the angle of the trunk relative to the slope. In folklore, such obstacles were symbolic, as well as literal, teaching listeners that courage without thought could lead to missteps, while patience and observation allowed success and growth. The hero carefully placed one foot on the trunk, testing its balance, then shifted weight slowly. Small branches creaked beneath cautious pressure. The forest seemed to hold its breath as each movement was made deliberately. Midway across, the hero noticed a faint shimmer in the distance, a glimmer of red and gold among green leaves. The Firebird was near, and the moment reinforced the lesson that observation and calm action could reveal the extraordinary in subtle forms. Emerging on the other side, the hero followed the flicker of feathers deeper into the forest. Streams and rivulets created soft murmurs, reflecting sunlight in dancing patterns. At one bend, a small animal scurried past, startling the hero briefly. Yet this minor surprise did not deter attention. Observation had to remain calm, steady, and continuous. Every sound, smell, or shift of light became part of the lesson, emphasizing the interconnectedness of patience, reflection, and responsiveness. As the day progressed, the hero faced more subtle trials. Dense undergrowth slowed progress, tangled roots threatened missteps, and shadowed hollows masked potential hazards. Each trial was both physical and mental, maintaining awareness, interpreting patterns of movement, and anticipating the next steps of the elusive Firebird. Folklorists note that these challenges mirrored real-life lessons embedded in stories, navigating uncertainty, developing resilience, and cultivating careful attention was central to both survival and personal growth. At midday, the hero reached a small clearing. Sunlight spilled through the leaves, illuminating patches of moss and low shrubs. Here the Firebird appeared briefly, perched on a low branch, its feathers glowing softly in the warm light. The hero crouched and observed, careful not to make sudden movements. Each feather's flicker, each tilt of the head, each glance carried lessons in attentiveness, patience, and ethical engagement. It was a subtle reminder that the pursuit was not about capture, but about learning, growth, and mindful observation. The first trial of courage emerged when the hero reached a stream with swift-moving water. Crossing required careful thought. Some stones were submerged, mossy, and slippery. Each step had to be deliberate, measuring distance, stability, and grip. The Firebird's presence across the stream provided motivation, but did not justify haste. Patience and awareness remained essential. This mirrored lessons embedded in folklore, where the pursuit of the extraordinary required reflection, deliberate action, and the tempering of impulse with wisdom. Carefully, the hero tested each stone, shifting weight slowly, feeling the current's subtle pull. One misstep could result in wet clothes, minor injury, or lost footing, yet the process itself was instructive. Observing water flow, noticing patterns of turbulence, and adapting movement accordingly became a meditation in attention and calm. By the time the hero crossed safely, patience, reflection, and careful execution had been reinforced. Deeper into the forest, the hero faced the next trial, navigating a grove of twisted trees. Sunlight barely penetrated the thick canopy, leaving shadows that obscured details of the forest floor. Here, careful observation was paramount. Twisting roots, fallen branches, and hidden depressions could cause slips or missteps. Each movement became deliberate, methodical, and connected to awareness of surroundings. The Firebird's faint glimmer among branches served as a subtle guide, encouraging both mindfulness and gentle pursuit. Hours passed in slow, attentive progress. The hero's senses were fully engaged. The scent of damp earth, the soft rustle of leaves, the distant calls of birds, the flicker of light on the feathers of the elusive creature. Observation had become second nature, patience, a practiced skill, and courage tempered by reflection. Each small challenge, the slippery stones, tangled roots, shadowed hollows, contributed to an accumulation of insight, reinforcing lessons of calm awareness and ethical pursuit. By late afternoon, the hero entered a glade bathed in golden light. Moss covered the ground like soft carpeting, and small wildflowers dotted the edges. The Firebird appeared once more, its feathers glowing brilliantly, reflecting light across the clearing in delicate patterns. The creature moved deliberately, displaying both beauty and subtle challenge. Every movement of the Firebird became a lesson: attention to detail, patience in observation, and courage in pursuit. Folklorists note that these narrative exercises were designed to embed virtues in young listeners, preparing them for both external challenges and internal growth. The hero crouched low, observing the Firebird's subtle shifts: a tilt of the head, a flicker of the tail, a gentle adjustment of wings. Each moment required calm observation, steady breathing, and mindful attention. The first encounters were over. Now the trials tested not merely perception but endurance, judgment, and reflection. Success required balance, integrating skill, patience, and ethical consideration into each action and decision. As evening approached, the hero found a small spot beneath a sprawling oak to rest. The Firebird had vanished temporarily, but its presence lingered in the faint glow of feathers and the subtle shimmer of light across the forest floor. In this pause, reflection became essential. Every trial had reinforced patience, attentiveness, and courage. Dreams of pursuit intertwined with awareness of subtle forest patterns, reinforcing lessons learned and preparing the mind for the next stage of the journey. Night fell fully, and the forest exhaled into calm darkness. Moonlight filtered through the leaves, casting soft silver patterns across roots and moss. The hero lay quietly, listening to the distant calls of nocturnal creatures and the whisper of the wind. Even in rest, reflection persisted. The trials were more than physical challenges. They were exercises in observation, ethical engagement, patience, and careful response to subtle cues. The Firebird, though unseen, remained a guide and a teacher through these practices. In these quiet hours, the hero's thoughts traced the day's lessons: careful observation, deliberate action, ethical pursuit, and the cultivation of patience and courage. Each small trial reinforced virtues embedded in folklore. The chase was both external and internal. The hero learned not only to follow but also to reflect, adjust, and understand the world in ways previously unimagined. Historians suggest that the structure of such folklore, pursuit, observation, and trials was designed to develop character, perception, and ethical awareness. Young listeners were trained subtly in patience, reflection, courage, and mindful engagement with both natural and social worlds. The Firebird's elusive presence embodied challenge and reward, teaching lessons in calm perseverance, thoughtful attention, and balanced action. By the early hours of night, the hero drifted towards sleep, the faint glow of the feather from previous encounters resting nearby. Dreams merged with memory, carrying flickers of red and gold, rustling leaves, and gentle movement of hidden animals. The trials and challenges of the day, while subtle, were deeply instructive. Each obstacle, observation, and reflection reinforced skills, virtues, and awareness. The journey toward the Firebird continued, deeper and more profound with each experience. Morning arrived slowly, the forest wrapped in soft silver mist. Dew clung to every leaf and blade of grass, sparkling faintly in the first light. The hero awoke beneath the broad canopy of an ancient oak, the glowing feather from earlier encounters safely tucked in a small pouch. Today's goal was unlike the others: to locate the Firebird's hidden nest, a place rarely seen and known only to those who followed carefully, observing every subtle cue of its radiant presence. The forest seemed quieter than usual, as though holding its breath. Small creatures moved gently beneath the undergrowth, leaves swayed softly, and the distant calls of birds echoed through the canopy. Each sound, each movement, and each glimmer of light became significant, guiding the hero toward the next stage of the journey. Every step required calm attention, steady breathing, and careful observation. The pursuit of the Firebird demanded patience, respect, and awareness of both the creature and the environment it inhabited. The hero moved along a narrow path, the ground soft beneath each footfall. Moss and fallen leaves cushioned steps, while roots snaked across the trail in delicate patterns. Observing the forest closely, the hero noticed the subtle traces left behind: faint scratches on bark, small glimmers of feathers, and the gentle displacement of leaves in places the Firebird had briefly perched. Each clue required careful attention, teaching the art of perception, patience, and reflection. By late morning, the hero reached a gentle slope where sunlight filtered through the dense branches in warm, dappled patterns. The glimmers of red and gold feathers became more frequent, as if guiding the way. The hero paused, kneeling to observe a faint sparkle on a moss-covered stone. It was a small feather, radiant in color yet delicate in appearance. Holding it gently, the hero reflected on the significance of these tokens. Each piece of evidence was both a clue and a lesson, reinforcing careful observation, patience, and respect for the living rhythm of the forest. Moving slowly, the hero followed a subtle trail of light and movement. Streams of water meandered alongside the path, their surfaces reflecting shifting sunlight in soft, dancing patterns. Tiny fish flickered beneath the surface, small insects skimmed the water, and moss grew thickly along the banks. Every detail contributed to a growing awareness of the environment. The hero began to notice the faint rhythms of forest life, the sway of branches, the shimmer of sunlight on leaves, and the subtle, almost imperceptible traces of the Firebird's passage. By midday, the hero arrived at a dense thicket, the trees and underbrush forming a natural barrier. The Firebird's presence was felt more than seen. A faint glow emanated from within, feathers catching the light in fleeting glimpses. Approaching carefully, the hero crouched, moving with deliberate attention. Every step required thought, every movement measured. This was a crucial lesson embedded in folklore. The pursuit of the extraordinary demanded ethical engagement, careful observation, and respect for the spaces inhabited by creatures beyond ordinary perception. After some time, the hero discovered the subtle signs of the hidden nest. Branches were arranged in a natural cradle, leaves woven gently into a circular pattern, and the faint glow of gold and red feathers shimmered from within. The Firebird was near, though not fully visible. Observing silently, the hero noted the careful construction and placement of each element in the nest, understanding that this hidden refuge was both a home and a sanctuary. It symbolized protection, patience, and the balance between visibility and concealment. The hero spent long minutes observing the nest from a respectful distance. The Firebird appeared briefly, gliding along the branches, then returning to its hidden perch. Each movement of the bird was deliberate, teaching lessons in careful navigation, subtle communication, and the importance of respect for living spaces. The hero realized that this encounter was not merely about witnessing beauty, but also about understanding the rhythms and ethics of coexisting with extraordinary beings. As the afternoon wore on, the hero explored the surroundings of the hidden nest. Sunlight filtered in shifting patterns through the canopy, illuminating moss-covered stones, small pools of water, and delicate flowers. The Firebird's occasional glimmers of red and gold guided careful attention to the forest's details. Each observation reinforced the virtues of patience, mindfulness, and ethical engagement, central themes in folklore, designed to cultivate insight, awareness, and balanced action in those who pursued extraordinary knowledge. A sudden shift in light revealed the Firebird fully perched within the nest, wings folded gracefully, head tilted, observing silently. The hero remained still, breathing slowly and steadily, absorbing the beauty and calm majesty of the creature. Its feathers radiated warmth, gold and red interlacing in soft patterns, creating an atmosphere of wonder and tranquility. This was a moment of profound understanding. The pursuit of extraordinary beings was not about conquest, but about observation, reflection, and the cultivation of virtues through mindful engagement. Hours passed in careful study. The hero noted subtle details, the way feathers reflected sunlight, the gentle sway of the nest under weight, and the intricate weaving of leaves and twigs. Each observation became a meditation in patience, mindfulness, and reflection. The Firebird's behavior was not random. It was a lesson in rhythm, timing, and the subtle interplay between presence and perception. The hero's understanding deepened with each quiet moment, reinforcing the narrative principles embedded in folklore: ethical pursuit, calm observation, and attentive reflection. By evening, the forest was bathed in muted gold and violet tones. Shadows lengthened, the wind whispered softly through the canopy, and distant calls of nocturnal creatures began to rise. The Firebird remained partially hidden, yet its presence illuminated the surrounding glade with a gentle glow. The hero reflected on the journey, the careful observation, patient pursuit, ethical engagement, and cultivation of mindfulness had brought understanding not only of the creature, but of the virtues necessary to navigate complex and extraordinary circumstances. Night descended fully, and the hero prepared a resting spot nearby, laying carefully on a soft patch of moss. Moonlight shimmered faintly on leaves and branches, and the Firebird's faint glow remained visible in the distance. The hero's mind replayed the lessons of the day: attention to detail, patience, reflection, ethical awareness, and courage. Even in rest, these lessons continued, reinforcing the internal growth cultivated through careful observation and deliberate action. Dreams were filled with flickers of red and gold feathers, the soft rustle of leaves, and gentle patterns of light across moss-covered ground. Each dream reflected the day's lessons: patience, courage, and the subtle art of observing without disturbing. The hidden nest, with its radiant occupant, symbolized sanctuary, balance, and careful navigation of both visible and unseen worlds. The hero's understanding deepened with every imagined movement of the Firebird within its nest, reinforcing mindfulness, reflection, and attentiveness. Historians suggest that the hidden nest motif in folklore was designed to teach virtues subtly: observation, patience, ethical awareness, and reflection. Young listeners, through the story, learned that pursuit of extraordinary beings was not merely about achievement, but about cultivating inner qualities, awareness, and harmonious interaction with the world. For the hero, the hidden nest represented both a literal and metaphorical goal, a space of calm, reflection, and understanding that would guide further encounters with the Firebird. The night deepened and the forest settled into a quiet rhythm. Crickets sang, the wind whispered, and the faint glow of the Firebird's feathers illuminated moss and leaves in shifting patterns. The hero lay in quiet meditation, reflecting on every trial, observation, and lesson of the day. Awareness, patience, courage, and ethical reflection had been cultivated through careful engagement with the forest and the Firebird, preparing the mind for further pursuit and deeper understanding. Dawn arrived with a gentle blush, painting the forest in muted pinks and golds. The hero rose carefully, the glowing feather from the hidden nest secure in a pouch. Today promised a challenge unlike any before. The Firebird would take flight, leading the hero across forested hills, sparkling streams, and shaded glades. It was a pursuit that demanded not only observation and patience, but also endurance, awareness, and the ability to adapt to unexpected shifts in movement and environment. The forest greeted the hero with familiar sounds: rustling leaves, distant bird calls, and the whisper of the wind through tall trees. Every movement, sound, and shimmer of light could signal the Firebird's presence. As historians of folklore note, the great flight motif often symbolized both literal and internal journeys. The pursuit of extraordinary beings represented personal growth, the cultivation of patience, courage, and perceptive awareness. The hero moved deliberately along a narrow trail, moss cushioning each step and fallen leaves muffling motion. Suddenly, a flicker of red and gold feathers flashed across a sunlit clearing. The Firebird had begun its flight. Rather than rushing, the hero paused to observe, learning the rhythm and pattern of its movements. Each glide, swoop, and dip carried subtle lessons in timing, observation, and respectful pursuit. The forest itself seemed to bend to the pace of the chase, trees swaying gently, light scattering in shifting patterns, shadows lengthening and retreating. The first leg of the flight led along a winding stream. Water sparkled in sunlight, reflecting colors like the Firebird's radiant plumage: stones, slick and moss-covered, demanded careful steps. The hero paused frequently, observing the bird's glides, noting patterns of movement, and adjusting positioning accordingly. In folklore, such trials emphasized reflection, calmness, and measured responses. Haste was discouraged. Attentiveness, awareness, and ethical engagement were rewarded. As morning stretched toward midday, the Firebird led the hero across rolling hills, its feathers glowing intermittently in the soft sunlight. From above, streams glimmered like liquid glass. Patches of flowers and moss reflected subtle glints of red and gold, and the forest's depth became apparent. Each observation was a lesson. Understanding terrain, adjusting steps, noticing subtle cues, and remaining calm despite fatigue. The pursuit was as much about internal fortitude as physical agility. At midday, the hero paused beneath a wide-spreading oak, breath steady, eyes scanning the forest ahead. The Firebird had perched momentarily on a distant branch, observing the hero with an almost knowing gaze. It flicked its wings, sending small sparks of light into the surrounding air, as though testing the hero's patience and awareness. The lesson was subtle. The chase was a dialogue, not a competition. Observation and thoughtful action were valued over impulsive pursuit. With careful steps, the hero continued, following faint glimmers of feathers across shaded glades and sunlit clearings. Streams curved gently, sunlight filtered through leaves, and small animals moved quietly, unaware of the pursuit. Every element of the forest offered guidance and instruction. Historians suggest that this stage of the folklore journey was intended to cultivate resilience, patience, and attentiveness, qualities essential both to personal growth and to successful pursuit of the extraordinary. The Firebird's great flight continued through late afternoon, leading over gentle hills where sunlight painted the land in gold and muted greens. Each swoop of the bird demanded careful response, gauging distance, anticipating shifts, and maintaining calm observation. The hero began to notice patterns, how the Firebird avoided obstacles, how its light reflected on moss and stone, and how it moved in sync with the rhythms of the forest. Understanding these patterns was both a challenge and a lesson, emphasizing mindfulness and careful perception. By early evening, the pursuit led to a high glade overlooking a sparkling river. The Firebird paused briefly on a branch, spreading wings wide. Its glow illuminated the surrounding grass, moss, and water in vivid red and gold hues. The hero approached carefully, noting the interplay of light, shadow, and reflection. Observation became almost meditative, each moment reinforcing the principles of patience, awareness, and ethical pursuit. As the sun sank lower, the Firebird lifted once more, taking a long, deliberate flight over the forest canopy. The hero followed cautiously, adapting to changes in speed and direction, learning the bird's rhythm and the subtle cues of its movement. Every turn, dive, and glide was an instruction in attentiveness and reflection. In folklore, these moments symbolized the internal journey, understanding patterns, timing, and harmony with forces beyond ordinary perception. Night approached as the Firebird alighted on a secluded hill, silhouetted against the fading sunlight. The hero observed from a respectful distance, the glowing feathers now appearing like soft embers in the dimming light. The forest exhaled into evening, leaves whispering, water murmuring, and distant creatures beginning their nocturnal calls. Each element of the environment contributed to the understanding of the Firebird, emphasizing that the pursuit was not merely physical, but contemplative, ethical, and reflective. The hero crouched, breathing steadily, eyes fixed on the glowing bird. Its movements were deliberate and measured, teaching the value of calm awareness, patience, and gentle observation. Even from afar, the Firebird's presence illuminated subtle details, patterns in the grass, reflections in water, and flickers of light on distant leaves. Each observation reinforced the virtues central to the folklore: resilience, attentiveness, courage tempered by patience, and ethical engagement with the extraordinary. As twilight deepened, the hero explored the surrounding hilltop, careful not to disturb the Firebird. The interplay of shadows, light, and glowing feathers created a hypnotic environment encouraging reflection and calm. The pursuit had become an exercise in balance, integrating observation, ethical consideration, courage, and patience into every movement and thought. Historians note that such narrative devices were designed to cultivate mindfulness and ethical engagement, long before the symbolic significance of the Firebird fully revealed itself. Night fell completely, and the hero prepared a quiet resting spot on the hilltop. Moonlight filtered through scattered clouds, casting silver patterns across moss and stone. The Firebird remained visible, a radiant silhouette, its soft glow illuminating the surrounding terrain. Even at rest, the lessons of the great flight persisted: careful observation, patience, courage, ethical awareness, and mindfulness. Dreams carried flickers of feathers, patterns of light, and movements across hills and rivers, reinforcing the day's reflections. The hero's mind traced every detail: the glimmer of feathers across streams, the reflective shimmer on stones, the patterns of flight, and the rhythm of the bird's movement. Awareness of environment, movement, and subtle cues deepened with every observation. Patience, reflection, courage, and ethical awareness became inseparable from the hero's consciousness. The pursuit of the Firebird had evolved from simple observation into an immersive, contemplative practice, integrating both external and internal learning. Historians suggest that the great flight motif symbolized not only physical pursuit, but also the cultivation of inner virtues: patience, attentiveness, courage, and ethical understanding. Through careful observation and reflection, listeners were trained to navigate complex challenges and understand the interconnections between action, consequence, and harmony with forces beyond ordinary comprehension. The Firebird's radiant, deliberate flight served as a guide and teacher, demonstrating the integration of skill, virtue, and mindfulness. By the end of the night, the forest had settled into calm quiet. The Firebird rested on a high branch, its glow softly illuminating the surrounding moss, stones, and trees. The hero lay beneath a nearby tree, absorbing the rhythms, patterns, and lessons of the pursuit. Observation, reflection, patience, courage, and ethical engagement had been practiced continuously, preparing the mind for further trials and encounters. The great flight, though challenging, had reinforced the core principles that would guide the hero toward eventual understanding and eventual success. The morning arrived quietly, pale sunlight streaming gently through the forest canopy. Mist lingered among the branches, curling around moss-covered trunks like soft silver smoke. The hero awoke, stretching limbs and adjusting the glowing feather safely tucked in the pouch. The day held a promise of new insight. The Firebird would offer the first gift, a token of trust and guidance, marking a turning point in the journey. The forest was alive with subtle movement. Birds called distantly, insects hummed softly, and the rustle of leaves hinted at small creatures moving beneath the undergrowth. Every sound, light flicker, and shadow carried significance. The hero stepped carefully along a narrow path, mindful of moss, roots, and subtle cues left behind by the Firebird. Historians note that such narrative devices symbolized attention to detail, patience, and careful observation as vital virtues for anyone pursuing wisdom or extraordinary beings. As the hero approached a sunlit clearing, a shimmer of red and gold feathers caught the eye. The Firebird hovered briefly above a bed of moss, wings flaring in delicate arcs, then descended gracefully to the ground. Its movement was fluid, measured, almost ceremonial. The hero crouched, breath steady, careful not to disturb the bird. Folklorists suggest that this careful interaction emphasized ethical engagement. Extraordinary beings in these tales were rarely conquered. They offered lessons and rewards to those who pursued them with respect and mindfulness. The Firebird stepped forward, radiating warmth and light across the clearing. Slowly it extended one wing, revealing a delicate, glowing feather resting at its base. The hero recognized the gesture, the first gift, a token of trust and a symbol of progress in the journey. Each detail of the moment, the position of the wings, the glimmer of light on moss and leaves, the soft movement of the surrounding forest reinforced the themes of patience, observation, and ethical awareness. The hero approached carefully, crouching low to retrieve the feather without disturbing the bird. Its glow was gentle but radiant, suffusing the immediate space with hues of gold and red. Holding the feather, the hero felt a sense of connection, a subtle acknowledgement of the virtues practiced during trials and observation. In folklore, the gift often represented recognition, reward, and guidance, a tangible reminder that careful, ethical pursuit of extraordinary beings cultivated inner growth and understanding. Hours passed in quiet reflection. The hero studied the feather, noting its intricate structure, the subtle gradation of color, and the soft, almost imperceptible shimmer when touched by sunlight. The first gift was more than a physical object. It was a lesson embedded in narrative form. Patience, observation, courage, and ethical engagement had been recognized and rewarded. The process reinforced the hero's understanding of both the Firebird and the deeper principles underlying the journey. Nearby, the Firebird remained partially hidden, its gaze steady and calm. Every subtle flick of feathers, tilt of the head, and graceful movement provided instruction. The hero observed silently, integrating the lessons of careful approach, measured action, and attentive perception. Folklorists note that these symbolic interactions were designed to cultivate virtues essential not only to the pursuit of the extraordinary, but also to the challenges of everyday life: awareness, patience, and ethical consideration. Midday brought a gentle wind that rustled leaves and scattered light across the forest floor. The Firebird fluttered briefly, then returned to a nearby branch. Its behavior seemed deliberate, each movement precise and measured. The hero remained attentive, reflecting on the significance of each gesture. Every moment reinforced the story's lessons. The pursuit was a dialogue, not a conquest, and rewards were granted to those who demonstrated patience, ethical consideration, and careful observation. The first gift also carried practical lessons. The feather emitted a faint warmth, its glow providing soft illumination in shadowed corners of the forest. Observing this, the hero realized that every gift in folklore was symbolic and functional, teaching attentive use, responsibility, and respect. Holding the feather carefully, the hero understood that true reward came not from possession, but from the integration of knowledge, patience, and ethical practice into daily action and thought. By late afternoon, the hero explored the surrounding glade, integrating the lessons of the first gift. Streams shimmered in sunlight, moss softened footsteps, and small animals moved quietly nearby. Observation, reflection, patience, and ethical engagement guided each step. The first gift became both a physical reminder and an internalized principle. Growth and understanding were achieved through careful attention, measured action, and respectful pursuit. As the sun began to set, casting warm amber hues across the forest, the Firebird offered another small gesture, a flick of its tail and a delicate arc of feathers across the clearing. The hero noted every detail, integrating lessons of movement, observation, and patience into an ongoing rhythm. Each moment of interaction, though subtle, carried weight, emphasizing that the journey was as much about cultivating virtues as it was about approaching the extraordinary. Night fell, and the hero prepared a resting spot beneath a large protective oak. Moonlight filtered through branches, illuminating moss and leaves, and the faint glow of the feather provided additional comfort. Reflection continued even in rest. The first gift symbolized the progress achieved, the virtues practiced, and the growing understanding of the Firebird's presence and significance. The journey was now deeper, richer, and more instructive. Dreams carried patterns of red and gold, gentle movements, and subtle light across moss and leaves. The hero's mind replayed every interaction, the careful approach, the observant patience, the ethical engagement, and the attentive reflection. Every trial and every observation converged into a growing understanding, and the first gift became a bridge between external experience and internal growth. Historians suggest that such narrative structures were designed to teach patience, mindfulness, courage, and ethical awareness, long before the final rewards or resolution were reached. As the night deepened, the forest exhaled into calm quiet. The firebird's presence lingered, softly glowing atop a nearby branch, its silent vigilance reinforcing lessons of observation, patience, and ethical engagement. The hero's mind, guided by reflection, integrated the day's experiences, cultivating a sense of balance, awareness, and readiness for the next stage of the journey. The first gift, tangible and radiant, was also symbolic, a reminder that reward and understanding come to those who pursue extraordinary beings with respect, attention, and careful action. The hero's consciousness absorbed every subtle cue, glimmers of feathers in the undergrowth, patterns of sunlight and shadow, gentle movements of water and moss, and the soft radiance of the firebird itself. Each observation reinforced the principles of patience, attentiveness, courage, and ethical pursuit. The first gift became both a tool and a symbol, guiding further interactions and embedding the virtues necessary for the ultimate understanding of the firebird. The forest at dawn was quiet, a soft veil of mist hovering over moss-covered ground. Light filtered through the trees in gentle rays, illuminating dew-laden leaves and delicate flowers. The hero rose slowly, the first gift feather secure in a small pouch, and began the journey toward a deeper part of the forest. Today promised a rare experience, the whispering flames, a phenomenon that only appeared to those who had gained the firebird's trust. The flames were said to speak softly, imparting lessons through warmth, color, and motion, guiding observers toward deeper understanding and insight. The hero moved with deliberate care, noticing every shift in light and shadow. Each step was measured, absorbing the subtle details of forest life, the shimmer of water on leaves, the sway of branches, the soft rustle of small creatures moving unseen beneath the undergrowth. Historians note that the whispering flames motif in folklore was designed to cultivate acute observation, patience, and reflective thought. The flames were not merely an external spectacle but a tool for teaching mindfulness, ethical awareness, and the appreciation of subtle patterns in nature. By mid-morning, the hero reached a secluded glade where sunlight pooled in golden patches across the forest floor. There, the first sparks of the whispering flames flickered among moss-covered stones and fallen leaves. Their glow was soft, almost ethereal, blending shades of red, gold, and orange. The flames seemed to move with a rhythm, pulsating gently in patterns that hinted at meaning, as though communicating through motion and light rather than words. Approaching carefully, the hero crouched, observing the flames' behavior. Each flicker and shimmer seemed deliberate, teaching lessons in attention, patience, and interpretive awareness. Historians suggest that such elements in folklore were designed to encourage active engagement. The observer must discern meaning through reflection and attentive observation, cultivating patience, insight, and an ethical approach to extraordinary phenomena. As the day progressed, the whispering flames became more intricate. Their movements traced subtle arcs over the forest floor, illuminating moss, stones, and small flowers in patterns of light. The hero followed the patterns slowly, noting the interplay of color and movement, the gentle rhythm of the flickering lights, and the harmony between the flames and the surrounding environment. Each observation reinforced a growing understanding. The forest, the firebird, and the flames were interconnected, forming a network of lessons to be absorbed carefully and respectfully. Midday brought a shift in sunlight, casting long shadows through the glade. The flames responded subtly, their glow intensifying in some areas while dimming in others, as if acknowledging the hero's careful observation. Every flicker, every movement, and every change in intensity was a message, requiring interpretation and patience. Folklorists note that the whispering flames motif symbolized the importance of attentiveness, reflection, and ethical engagement, teaching that understanding the extraordinary demanded both perception and mindful contemplation. The hero knelt beside a small pool of water, watching as the flames' reflections danced across its surface. Each ripple, each shimmer, offered new perspectives, emphasizing the subtleties of observation and interpretation. The pattern of light on water mirrored the rhythm of the flames, reinforcing the lesson that awareness required both stillness and attentiveness. The hero's mind absorbed every detail, integrating the visual and sensory information into a growing comprehension of the Firebird's teachings. By afternoon, the whispering flames had begun to form gentle spirals, rising briefly from the forest floor before settling back into moss and leaf litter. The hero observed the subtle arcs and rotations, noting how each movement was interconnected with surrounding light and shadow. Every gesture, every pulse, carried significance, reinforcing lessons in mindfulness, patience, ethical engagement, and the careful observation of cause and effect. The forest itself seemed to respond to the hero's awareness, the flames intensifying when attention was steady and calming, when the observer's mind became restless. The Firebird appeared briefly, alighting on a nearby branch, its feathers glowing softly in the dappled sunlight. Its presence was a silent reminder of the connection between creature, environment, and observer. The hero noted the harmonious relationship, understanding that the flames, like the Firebird itself, were both teachers and mirrors of inner state. Observation required balance. One had to remain calm, attentive, and ethically engaged to fully perceive the lessons encoded in the flames' movements. As evening approached, the forest was bathed in muted gold and violet tones. The whispering flames began to respond to fading light, glowing more intensely, creating a hypnotic rhythm across moss, stones, and fallen leaves. The hero's mind became attuned to subtle patterns, arcs of light, gentle flickers, and shifting intensity. Every moment was a meditation, integrating lessons of attentiveness, reflection, patience, and ethical engagement. Historians suggest that such motifs were meant to teach that observation and understanding required alignment between inner state and outer environment, reinforcing virtues cultivated during the pursuit of the extraordinary. Nightfall brought a profound stillness. The whispering flames glowed softly in a circle around the hero, who sat quietly absorbing the rhythms and messages embedded in each flicker. The forest exhaled into calm, every leaf, stone, and small creature contributing to a holistic awareness. The Firebird's presence remained nearby, perched silently on a branch, radiating warmth and reassurance. The hero's reflection on the day's experience revealed the integration of lesson and practice, observation, mindfulness, patience, courage, and ethical engagement had been exercised continuously, deepening both understanding and internal growth. Moonlight filtered through the trees, casting silver patterns across moss and leaves. The whispering flames responded subtly, their glow shifting in correspondence with the hero's calm presence. Every flicker, every shimmer, every gentle movement became a meditation in awareness, reinforcing the story's embedded virtues: patience, attentiveness, reflection, ethical awareness, and mindfulness. The hero's mind traced the delicate arcs of light, interpreting subtle messages in the rhythm of the flames, integrating external observation with internal reflection. The hero's dreams that night carried gentle flickers of flame across forested glades, arcs of red, gold, and orange, swirling in quiet patterns. The movements of the Firebird and the whispering flames intertwined, reinforcing lessons of observation, patience, reflection, and ethical engagement. Historians note that such narrative structures were designed to cultivate virtues over extended periods of reflection, using symbolic elements to train attention, awareness, and mindfulness gradually and profoundly. By the end of the night, the forest had settled into an almost sacred calm. The whispering flames glowed faintly across the moss and stones, a quiet reminder of lessons learned and patience practiced. The hero lay beneath a protective canopy, absorbing the rhythms, patterns, and messages embedded in every flicker. Awareness, reflection, courage, and ethical engagement had been exercised throughout the day, creating a foundation for further encounters and deeper understanding of the Firebird's wisdom. Morning light filtered gently through the dense canopy of the forest, illuminating dew-drenched leaves and moss-covered stones. The hero rose slowly, the first gift feather safely secured, and began the journey deeper into the forest of reflections. This was a place said to test perception, patience, and insight, where each step and observation was mirrored by subtle shifts in the environment. The trees themselves seemed to watch, their shadows stretching across the ground in patterns that echoed the observer's movements. The hero moved carefully along the winding path, noticing the smallest details, the shimmer of sunlight on wet leaves, the gentle sway of branches, and the quiet movement of unseen creatures. Historians note that in folklore, reflective forests served both literal and symbolic purposes. They trained travelers to observe attentively, recognize patterns, and engage ethically with their surroundings. Every reflected image, every subtle shift in shadow was intended to cultivate patience, awareness, and reflective thought. By mid-morning, the hero reached a pool of perfectly still water. Its surface mirrored the canopy above, with crystalline clarity, revealing inverted branches, delicate leaves, and soft, dappled light. The reflection seemed almost sentient, moving slightly with the hero's own breath and step. The first challenge of the Forest of Reflections was apparent, understanding how perception altered reality and learning to interpret subtle cues without distortion or haste. Observation here required mindfulness and quiet attention. As the hero approached the pool, faint glimmers of red and gold feathers floated across its surface, suggesting the Firebird's nearby presence. The reflections danced gently, creating arcs of color and light that shifted with every movement. Each flicker was both a clue and a lesson. Careful observation and deliberate action were necessary to understand the environment, and patience was rewarded with clarity. Folklorists suggest that such reflective elements in stories encouraged readers and listeners to integrate awareness, ethical engagement, and mindful attention into their own lives. The hero followed a narrow trail along the edge of the reflective pool, noting subtle disturbances in the mirrored surface, a leaf trembling, a shimmer of light across ripples, and faint arcs of feather glow. Each observation demanded slow, deliberate attention. The Forest of Reflections was not a place for haste. Every detail reinforced lessons in patience, mindfulness, and ethical interaction. Hurrying would distort perception. Calm observation allowed understanding to unfold naturally. By midday, the hero encountered a glade filled with shallow streams. Their surfaces mirrored the sky, clouds, and canopy above, creating a sense of infinite depth. The Firebird appeared briefly, its radiant feathers flickering across the water in shimmering patterns. The hero paused, studying the interplay of reflection, light, and movement. Each observation became an exercise in focus, attention, and reflective interpretation. Historians note that reflective water motifs in folklore symbolized both self-awareness and the careful study of external phenomena. The hero continued along winding trails, passing through groves of birch and oak whose bark shimmered faintly in sunlight. Reflections appeared not only in water but on wet stones, leaves, and even on dew-laden spiderwebs. Each mirrored image demanded attentive consideration, teaching that the world, like the Firebird, often offered guidance subtly, requiring ethical observation and patient interpretation. Every step, every glance reinforced the importance of integrating perception with mindfulness and reflective understanding. As afternoon approached, the hero came to a small waterfall, the water cascading over moss-covered stones and pooling in a mirrored basin below. The Firebird circled above, its glowing feathers reflecting in the water in delicate arcs of red and gold. The hero crouched, observing the patterns carefully. The waterfall introduced a new layer of complexity, moving reflections that required precise timing and calm focus to interpret. Each movement of the bird, water, and light became a lesson in rhythm, observation, and ethical engagement. By late afternoon, the hero had traversed several mirrored glades, streams, and pools. The Firebird guided the journey subtly, appearing in fleeting glimpses and guiding attention to hidden patterns. The forest itself seemed alive with reflection, Every leaf, stone, and ripple offered insights. Observation was no longer a passive act. It required integration of sensory input, reflective thought, and ethical consideration. Each mirrored surface became a teacher, reinforcing virtues of patience, attentiveness, courage, and mindful interpretation. As evening descended, the forest of reflections was bathed in soft golden light, shadows lengthened, and the reflective surfaces deepened in color and intensity. The Firebird alighted atop a high branch, wings folded gracefully. Its glow illuminated nearby leaves, moss, and water in a warm, calming pattern. The hero remained still, absorbing the intricate interplay of reflection, light, and movement. Every element of the forest mirrored the hero's own state of attention and patience, reinforcing the importance of mindfulness and ethical engagement. Night arrived with a tranquil hush. Moonlight filtered through the canopy, casting silver highlights across the mirrored pools. The Firebird's glow remained soft and steady, reflecting in water, stones, and dew. The hero lay quietly on moss, eyes tracing every shimmer and pattern. Every flicker, every movement, every reflected image became a meditation, reinforcing the virtues that had been practiced throughout the journey: patience, mindfulness, courage, and ethical awareness. Dreams carried images of mirrored streams, floating feathers, and glowing arcs of light across forest glades. The hero's mind replayed every observation, integrating lessons learned from subtle shifts in reflection, movement, and light. The forest of reflections, with its mirrored surfaces and the presence of the Firebird, emphasized that understanding came from careful, deliberate observation, ethical engagement, and reflective attention. Historians suggest that reflective forest motifs were employed to train mindfulness, patience, and interpretive skill, gradually cultivating both external and internal awareness in the observer. By the end of the night, the forest settled into an almost sacred calm. The mirrored pools glowed faintly in moonlight, leaves shimmered softly, and the Firebird rested silently above. The hero reflected on the day's experience. Careful observation, reflective attention, patience, and ethical engagement had been exercised fully. The forest of reflections had provided both physical and metaphorical lessons, preparing the hero for further trials, deeper understanding, and eventual mastery of the Firebird's wisdom. Dawn broke slowly over the forest, casting gentle light across moss-covered stones and dew-speckled leaves. The hero rose, carrying the first gift feather, and ventured toward the heart of the forest. Today promised a challenge, unlike any before: the trial of courage. Legends whispered that only those with steadfast resolve, calm awareness, and ethical fortitude could face it successfully. The Firebird would guide the trial, testing the hero's ability to remain composed, attentive, and courageous when confronted with both visible and unseen challenges. The forest was alive with quiet movement. Rustling leaves, distant bird calls, and soft murmurs of water filled the air. The hero's steps were measured, mind alert to subtle cues: a fallen branch slightly displaced, a glint of sunlight across moss, a flicker of red and gold in the distance. Each observation was critical, for the trial of courage required both physical composure and ethical mindfulness. Historians suggest that courage in folklore was rarely about bold action alone. It was cultivated through attentive observation, patience, and careful reflection. By mid-morning, the hero approached a narrow gorge with a rushing stream below. The wind carried a chill, rustling branches overhead. Across the gorge, a series of stepping stones protruded from the water, slick and uneven. The Firebird hovered briefly above the stones, wings extended, as if signaling the start of the trial. The hero paused, assessing each step, the flow of the stream, and the distance between stones. Courage required awareness, balance, and careful deliberation. Haste or recklessness could lead to failure. With deliberate focus, the hero began the crossing. Each stone demanded attention, measuring distance, testing grip, adjusting weight, and observing the gentle currents below. The Firebird remained above, its glowing feathers casting soft light that illuminated the path, providing subtle guidance. Every step became an exercise in courage tempered by mindfulness. The hero learned that courage was not blind bravery, but the integration of awareness, ethical engagement, and steady determination. Midday brought a second challenge, a shadowed glade filled with low-hanging branches, tangled roots, and sudden drops into hidden pits. The Firebird led the hero slowly through this section, pausing periodically to observe. Every subtle change in light, shadow, or the movement of leaves provided critical information. Courage required not only facing physical danger, but also maintaining calm, thoughtful attention. Folklorists note that such trials symbolized the necessity of integrating insight, patience, and ethical action when navigating both literal and metaphorical challenges. The hero encountered small creatures along the way, rabbits, foxes, and birds. Their sudden movements tested reflexes and composure, teaching the importance of observation and restraint. The Firebird's presence served as a constant reminder. Courage was measured, not through impulsive action, but by the ability to remain calm, reflective, and ethically engaged, even in the presence of potential danger. Afternoon sunlight filtered through dense trees as the hero entered a rocky ravine. Large boulders created natural obstacles requiring careful climbing, balance, and timing. The Firebird's guidance became more subtle, glowing intermittently on distant rocks or shifting its position to indicate safer passage. Every movement demanded attentive observation, mindful decision-making, and composure under pressure. The hero's internal state mirrored the trial itself, courage intertwined with awareness, patience, and ethical discernment. By late afternoon, the hero reached a clearing where shadows lengthened and the air grew cooler. The Firebird descended onto a moss-covered rock, its feathers glowing softly. The hero approached cautiously, recognizing the importance of patience and respect. The final component of the trial required speaking without fear, asking questions and observing answers in silence. Legends note that courage was tested not only by action but also by vulnerability and attentive engagement, qualities that distinguished ordinary bravery from true fortitude. The hero knelt, observing the Firebird's movements carefully. Each subtle twitch of feathers, tilt of the head, or adjustment of wings conveyed meaning. Courage in this context was measured by patience, reflective observation, and ethical engagement. The Firebird's glow illuminated moss, stones, and leaves, creating a tranquil yet instructive environment. Historians suggest that these narrative elements emphasized the cultivation of measured courage through attentive awareness, reflection, and ethical consideration. As evening approached, the forest was bathed in muted golds and violets. The Firebird extended one wing, revealing a new feather, slightly larger than the first, resting delicately at its base. The hero recognized this as a reward, the successful completion of the trial. The second gift symbolized the integration of courage with patience, mindfulness, and ethical engagement. Holding the feather, the hero felt a deep sense of accomplishment and growth, understanding that true courage was inseparable from thoughtful observation and reflective action. Night fell, and the forest exhaled into quiet calm. Moonlight filtered through branches, reflecting off stones, leaves, and the gently flowing stream. The Firebird perched nearby, its glow soft but steady. The hero settled beneath a protective tree, reflecting on the day's challenges. Each obstacle, each careful movement, each observation had reinforced essential virtues, courage measured by mindfulness, patience, ethical engagement, and reflective attention. The trial was complete, but its lessons would echo throughout the journey. Dreams carried images of stepping stones across rushing streams, shadowed glades, rocky ravines, and the glowing Firebird. Every movement, every flicker of light, every subtle observation was replayed, reinforcing lessons in courage, patience, mindfulness, and ethical engagement. Folklorists note that trials of courage in these narratives were designed not to test impulsive bravery, but to cultivate steady, thoughtful resilience, in the presence of both visible and unseen challenges. By the end of the night, the hero's understanding of courage had deepened. It was no longer simply the absence of fear, but the integration of observation, patience, reflection, and ethical action. The Firebird's guidance and the successful completion of the trial had provided tangible and symbolic affirmation. True courage was cultivated through mindfulness, steady engagement, and careful attention to both the environment and one's own internal state. The forest morning began with a soft mist curling around moss-covered branches and weaving between the trunks like delicate silver threads. The hero rose slowly, the first and second gift feathers safely secured, and prepared to enter a deeper part of the forest, the place where shadows danced and whispered secrets. This part of the journey promised subtle trials, demanding awareness, courage, and patience. Here, the Firebird's guidance would become less obvious, requiring the hero to discern patterns and meaning in fleeting movements of light and dark. The forest seemed alive with shadows, stretching and twisting as sunlight filtered through the canopy. Every rustle of leaves, every glimmer of light carried significance. The hero moved deliberately, attentive to subtle cues, the quiver of a branch, a glint of red or gold in the distance, the soft flicker of sunlight on moss and stone. Historians note that shadow motifs in folklore symbolized uncertainty, hidden knowledge, and the necessity of perceptive observation. Only those with patience and careful attention could interpret these subtle messages accurately. By mid-morning, the hero reached a glade where sunlight barely penetrated the dense canopy. Shadows pooled on the forest floor, creating shifting patterns that seemed to move with an almost sentient rhythm. The Firebird appeared intermittently, its feathers flickering in brief arcs of red and gold, blending with the shadows. Each movement offered a clue, a lesson, or a test. The hero crouched low, observing quietly, noting the interplay of shadow, light, and subtle movement. Patience and attentiveness were essential. Understanding the dance of shadows required integrating observation with reflective interpretation. The first challenge presented itself in the form of shifting silhouettes among the trees. What appeared at first as ordinary branches or foliage revealed subtle motion, small creatures, hidden obstacles, or fleeting flashes of the Firebird's feathers. Every step required careful attention, ethical engagement, and mindfulness. Folklorists suggest that these shadowy encounters symbolized life's uncertainty, teaching the observer to navigate ambiguity with calm, patience, and reflective discernment. As midday approached, the hero entered a narrow path flanked by dense undergrowth. Shadows danced across the ground, moving in response to subtle changes in light, wind, and the hero's own movements. Each flicker became a lesson in perception. The observer had to distinguish between superficial appearances and meaningful cues, recognizing patterns while maintaining ethical engagement and calm composure. The Firebird occasionally hovered above, guiding subtly, its glow blending with the shadowed forest. The hero paused beside a shallow stream, observing how shadows shifted over water, moss, and stones. Sunlight glinted off ripples, creating miniature arcs of light that intertwined with moving darkness. Each flicker and reflection was an opportunity for reflection and mindfulness. Courage and patience were both tested here. Courage to face uncertainty and patience to remain attentive and discerning in a forest filled with moving, dancing shadows. By mid-afternoon, the shadows deepened as sunlight waned, and the hero entered a grove of towering trees. The Firebird appeared briefly, its wings extended, casting elongated shadows across the forest floor. The hero moved slowly, following these arcs, interpreting subtle cues and adjusting to shifting light. Each observation reinforced essential lessons: awareness, reflective thought, patience, ethical engagement, and calm composure in the face of uncertainty. The dance of shadows demanded sustained attention. The hero noticed faint movements in peripheral vision, subtle shifts in the shape of leaves, and glimmers of red and gold that were often missed at first glance. Every moment required careful perception and ethical interpretation. Folklorists note that such narratives trained both attention and reflection, emphasizing that understanding and wisdom are cultivated over time through mindful observation and patience rather than impulsive action. By late afternoon, the hero reached a clearing illuminated by soft, warm light, shadows intertwined with the firebird's glowing feathers, creating patterns that seemed to communicate subtle lessons. The hero crouched, absorbing the interplay of light and dark, movement and stillness. Courage, patience, and ethical awareness were all exercised simultaneously, reinforcing the growth achieved in previous trials. The forest itself seemed to respond to attentive observation, deepening the hypnotic rhythm of the dance of shadows. As evening approached, long shadows stretched across moss, leaves, and stones. The firebird circled above, wings flaring in arcs of glowing red and gold. Its movement mirrored the interplay of shadows on the forest floor, creating a delicate ballet of light and dark. The hero studied every flicker, every subtle shift, every interplay of reflection and shadow. Each observation became a meditation, reinforcing the lessons embedded in the forest's rhythms: mindfulness, ethical engagement, patience, and calm courage. Night fell gradually, and the forest exhaled into a profound stillness. Moonlight filtered through branches, casting silver patterns across moss and stones. Shadows deepened, yet glimmers of the firebird's feathers provided gentle guidance. The hero settled beneath a protective tree, reflecting on the day's experiences. Every subtle movement of shadow, every flicker of light, and every pattern in the forest reinforced the virtues practiced: patient observation, mindful reflection, courage tempered with ethics, and attentive engagement with both the environment and the self. Dreams carried faint arcs of red and gold, delicate movements of shadows and light, and the rhythm of the firebird's dance. The hero's mind replayed every observation, integrating lessons learned from the interplay of illumination and darkness, reflection and movement. Historians note that shadow motifs in folklore symbolized uncertainty, hidden knowledge, and the cultivation of virtues through attentive observation and mindful interpretation. The dance of shadows was both a trial and a teacher, guiding the hero toward deeper understanding and growth. By the end of the night, the forest had settled into calm quiet. Shadows softened, moss glowed faintly in moonlight, and the firebird rested silently above. The hero reflected on the day's journey. Courage, patience, ethical engagement, mindfulness, and reflective observation had all been exercised fully. The dance of shadows reinforced the understanding that mastery of perception, attentiveness, and calm composure were essential virtues, preparing the hero for the next stage of the journey and the deeper wisdom the firebird would impart. Morning arrived slowly, the sun casting gentle light through the dense canopy. The hero rose, carrying the first 3 gift feathers, and prepared to enter the hidden grove. This secluded part of the forest was said to hold profound secrets, a place where understanding and wisdom could be deepened, but only by those with patience, courage, and reflective attention. The firebird would guide the way, but guidance was subtle here. One had to perceive it through careful observation, mindful engagement, and ethical attention. The path to the hidden grove was narrow and winding. Moss and ferns cushioned the forest floor, and the air was rich with the scent of earth and damp leaves. Every step demanded careful attention, as hidden roots, small rocks, and gentle streams created natural obstacles. The hero moved slowly, observing the subtle interplay of light and shadow, listening to the forest's soft sounds, and noting glimmers of red and gold among the greenery. Historians note that such secluded forest motifs symbolized the inner journey of reflection and the cultivation of virtues through observation and mindfulness. By mid-morning, the hero encountered the first feature of the hidden grove, a circle of ancient stones, each covered in moss, lichens, and faint carvings. The stones radiated quiet significance, as if marking the forest's secrets for those attentive enough to perceive them. The firebird perched on a branch above, feathers glowing softly, drawing the hero's gaze to particular carvings and subtle patterns. Every observation was a lesson in careful attention, reflection, and ethical engagement. The stones were a mirror of both the forest's wisdom and the hero's growing understanding. The hero moved among the stones, tracing the moss-covered carvings with careful fingers. Each mark, each pattern seemed to convey meaning: the arc of a line, the placement of a symbol, the spacing between stones. Observing these subtle features cultivated patience and perception, teaching that wisdom was not revealed through haste or impulsive action, but through attentive engagement and careful reflection. Folklorists suggest that such motifs emphasized the integration of external observation with internal understanding, a recurring theme in Firebird tales. By midday, the hidden grove revealed its second feature, a shallow pond, perfectly still, reflecting the canopy above in crystalline clarity. The Firebird appeared briefly, its red and gold feathers shimmering across the water's surface. The hero observed ripples caused by gentle winds, leaves falling softly, and light refracting across water and moss. Each subtle movement carried lessons: attentiveness, ethical engagement, and reflective observation were needed to discern the forest's messages. The pond's surface mirrored both the forest and the hero's inner state, emphasizing the interconnection of perception, mindfulness, and ethical action. As afternoon approached, the hero noticed subtle changes in the forest. Patches of sunlight created shifting patterns on the forest floor, highlighting flowers, moss, and the occasional feather glinting in the undergrowth. The Firebird guided the hero gently through the grove, often appearing briefly above a patch of light or a particularly intricate pattern of leaves and stones. Each observation reinforced prior lessons. Patience, awareness, and ethical engagement were essential to uncover hidden wisdom. Every movement, every subtle cue in the environment demanded reflection and careful interpretation. The hero continued through the grove, encountering small natural obstacles: fallen branches, uneven ground, and shallow pools of water. Each required measured attention, mindful action, and calm composure. The Firebird's guidance remained subtle but consistent, glowing intermittently to highlight areas of significance. By carefully observing patterns, movements, and interactions within the grove, the hero learned to integrate reflection, ethical engagement, and mindfulness into each action, reinforcing essential virtues for the journey ahead. Late afternoon brought a final challenge: a narrow, shadowed passage lined with ancient trees. Their roots twisted intricately across the forest floor, and the canopy above created a patchwork of light and darkness. The Firebird led the way, perching on a low branch and spreading its wings to reveal glowing feathers that illuminated the path. Each step through this passage demanded patience, courage, and careful observation. Historians note that trials involving light and shadow symbolized discernment, reflection, and ethical engagement, teaching that understanding and wisdom required deliberate, attentive effort. The hero paused at a small clearing near the passage's end, noticing subtle patterns in moss, leaves, and light that seemed to communicate lessons about interconnectedness, observation, and mindfulness. Each detail required attentive engagement: tracing a line of moss, following a ripple in water, or observing a feather's glow. Courage, patience, ethical attention, and reflective observation were all exercised simultaneously. The forest itself seemed to respond to the hero's awareness, creating a subtle rhythm of learning and growth. As evening approached, the hidden grove was bathed in soft golden light, and the Firebird alighted atop an ancient tree, its feathers glowing warmly. The hero approached carefully, noting the interplay of light, shadow, and subtle movement. The forest seemed to hold its breath, emphasizing the importance of calm, attentive observation. Every feather, every shimmer, every reflection carried meaning, reinforcing virtues cultivated throughout the journey: patience, ethical engagement, courage, and reflective awareness. Nightfall brought tranquility to the hidden grove. Moonlight filtered through branches, creating silver patterns on the forest floor and pond surfaces. The Firebird remained nearby, glowing softly and providing a quiet reminder of the lessons learned. The hero settled on moss beneath a protective canopy, reflecting on the day's experiences. Observation, patience, courage, ethical engagement, and mindful reflection had all been exercised fully. The hidden grove had revealed profound wisdom for those attentive enough to perceive it. Dreams carried images of moss-covered stones, mirrored ponds, glowing feathers, and the intricate interplay of light and shadow. Each flicker, ripple, and reflection reinforced lessons in mindfulness, courage, patience, and ethical engagement. Folklorists suggest that secluded grove motifs symbolize deep reflection, ethical attentiveness, and the cultivation of understanding over time. The hidden grove, with its subtle cues and gentle guidance from the Firebird, served as both trial and teacher, deepening comprehension and reinforcing virtues necessary for the journey ahead. By the end of the night, the hidden grove settled into profound calm. The Firebird rested quietly atop an ancient branch, feathers glowing faintly, while the hero reflected on the day's experiences. Observation, patience, ethical engagement, and mindful reflection had been exercised fully, preparing the hero for deeper wisdom, more intricate challenges, and the next stage of the journey into the Firebird's secrets. Morning arrived with gentle mist hovering above the forest floor. The hero rose, holding the first 4 gift feathers carefully, and approached a new feature of the forest, a river said to hold the memories of those who had walked the land before. Its waters glimmered with soft light, reflecting not only the canopy above, but faint echoes of distant footsteps, whispered conversations, and the lives of those long past. Legends told that the River of Memories would challenge perception, patience, and reflection, asking the traveler to observe deeply and understand the lessons hidden within its flowing currents. The hero followed a narrow path along the riverbank, the soft sound of flowing water mixing with the whisper of wind through leaves. Each step required attention, as hidden stones and uneven ground could disrupt the journey. The Firebird flew above, occasionally alighting on branches to cast a soft glow over the rippling surface, subtly guiding the hero toward areas where the river's hidden messages could be discerned. Historians note that rivers in folklore often symbolized the flow of time, memory, and continuity, teaching that attentive observation was essential to understanding both external and internal truths. By mid-morning, the hero reached a shallow section of the river. The water's surface mirrored the sky, the surrounding forest, and faint, ethereal images that shimmered just beneath. These were glimpses of the past, villagers tending fields, travelers resting along distant roads, and children playing near forgotten streams. Each image demanded careful observation. The River of Memories required the hero to integrate visual cues, reflective thought, and ethical attention to understand the significance of what was shown. Patience and mindfulness were essential, for rushing or looking superficially could obscure the lessons embedded in the flowing water. The hero knelt by the river, observing how the current shifted and shaped each memory. Leaves and petals floated downstream, interacting with the reflections and forming transient patterns that conveyed subtle stories. The Firebird hovered above, its glowing feathers illuminating select ripples and shadows, drawing attention to moments that might otherwise go unnoticed. Courage and attentiveness were tested here as well. To truly perceive the river's lessons, the hero had to maintain calm composure and ethical mindfulness, interpreting the fleeting memories without judgment or haste. Midday brought a new perspective. The river widened, and small islands of moss and stone appeared intermittently. Each island contained fragments of memory, faded structures, glimpses of villagers' faces, and the delicate movement of daily life from long ago. The hero moved slowly, stepping carefully from stone to stone, observing the interactions between the current, reflections, and floating images. Folklorists suggest that such elements symbolized the connection between past and present, demonstrating that understanding required patient observation, ethical engagement, and reflective interpretation. As afternoon approached, the river became more complex. Currents intersected, reflections shifted, and shadows played across the water in intricate patterns. The Firebird's movements mirrored the subtle shifts in the river, gliding gracefully along currents or hovering above illuminated ripples. The hero followed, learning to discern meaningful patterns from passing distractions, integrating mindfulness, patience, courage, and ethical reflection into each observation. Each step, each glance, each ripple in the water reinforced the virtues cultivated in previous trials. By mid-afternoon, the hero encountered a small, shaded alcove along the river. Here, the water slowed and became crystal clear, revealing an intricate mosaic of past lives and subtle messages. Each image, people walking, tending fires, or resting beneath trees, required patient study. The hero paused for long moments, noticing the subtlest cues, the tilt of a head, the flicker of movement, the interaction between shadows and reflections. Courage and composure were necessary, as the depth of the memories could be overwhelming if approached hastily. The Firebird guided the hero gently along the alcove's edge, occasionally dipping into the water to stir small currents, revealing hidden fragments of memory beneath the surface. These subtle disturbances offered new perspectives, teaching that understanding often required active engagement combined with calm observation. Historians note that rivers in myth frequently represented both the flow of time and the accumulation of experience, emphasizing that the act of observing was inseparable from the cultivation of insight, patience, and ethical discernment. Late afternoon brought a final challenge, a deep bend in the river where currents moved swiftly, reflecting shifting light in intricate patterns. Here the hero had to balance on narrow stones, while observing rapidly changing images of past lives. The Firebird hovered above, its glowing feathers tracing arcs in the air, guiding attention to fleeting moments that contained essential lessons. Every ripple, shadow, and reflection demanded patience, composure, and careful observation. The trial emphasized that courage, mindfulness, and ethical engagement were intertwined with perception and understanding. As evening approached, the hero reached a small pool at the river's bend. Perfectly still and reflecting the sky above, the Firebird descended and revealed a new feather, the fifth glowing softly and resting delicately at its feet. The hero recognized this as a reward, the successful navigation of the river of memories. Holding the feather, the hero felt an internal sense of accomplishment and growth. The trial had reinforced essential virtues: patient observation, mindful reflection, courage, and ethical engagement, all cultivated through attentive interaction with the flowing currents and ephemeral images. Night fell, and the forest settled into quiet calm. Moonlight glimmered on the river, illuminating gentle ripples and faint reflections of the Firebird above. The hero rested nearby, reflecting on the lessons learned: attentive observation, ethical engagement, reflective patience, and courage in the face of subtle and shifting challenges. The river of memories had revealed that understanding and wisdom required sustained attention, calm composure, and mindful integration of perception with reflection. Dreams carried images of flowing water, shimmering reflections, faint echoes of past lives, and the Firebird's glowing feathers. Each ripple and shifting shadow reinforced the lessons embedded in the river: patience, mindfulness, courage, ethical engagement, and careful observation. Folklorists note that water motifs in myth often symbolize the flow of knowledge, memory, and experience, teaching that thoughtful reflection was necessary to integrate the lessons of the past with the growth of the observer. By the end of the night, the river exhaled into quiet stillness. The Firebird rested above, wings folded gracefully, its glow softly illuminating the surrounding trees and water. The hero reflected on the day's journey, recognizing the deep integration of virtue, observation, courage, patience, and ethical engagement. The river of memories had provided lessons both literal and symbolic, reinforcing the practices necessary to navigate the remainder of the Firebird's challenges and the continued journey toward understanding and mastery. The morning air was crisp and cool as the hero approached the base of the Mountain of Echoes. Its peaks rose sharply into the sky, shrouded in wisps of mist that glimmered with the first light of dawn. The path ahead was steep, rocky, and uneven, demanding both physical composure and attentive awareness. The Firebird, perched on a twisted branch nearby, glowed softly, its red and gold feathers illuminating the first steps of the ascent. Legends held that the Mountain of Echoes tested the traveler's perception, patience, and inner reflection, echoing not only sounds, but also thoughts and intentions. The hero began the climb, carefully navigating jagged rocks and narrow ledges. Every footfall required attention. A loose stone could cause a stumble, and a misjudged step could mean retracing progress or encountering unforeseen challenges. The Firebird flew ahead, occasionally flaring its wings to scatter light across precarious edges, signaling safer paths. Historians suggest that mountains in folklore often symbolize elevated understanding and the trials necessary to attain wisdom, where patience and mindful observation are as important as physical effort. By mid-morning, the hero encountered the first echoing chamber, a hollowed rock formation that magnified even the softest sound. Every footstep, breath, and whispered word resonated through the chamber, creating a symphony of echoes. The Firebird hovered nearby, feathers glowing faintly, casting soft light on the stones and moss-covered surfaces. The hero paused, listening carefully to the echoes, noting subtle variations in pitch, tone, and rhythm. Each echo carried subtle lessons, reminding the traveler that reflection and perception were intertwined. Understanding often required careful attention to both external and internal reverberations. As the ascent continued, the terrain became steeper and more challenging. Loose gravel, moss-covered stones, and sudden drops demanded constant vigilance. The echoes grew more complex, intertwining with the wind and subtle movements of the Firebird above. The hero had to discern meaningful patterns from mere sound, integrating auditory perception with mindful observation of the environment. Courage, patience, and ethical awareness were tested continuously. The Mountain of Echoes required steady attention, calm composure, and reflective engagement at every step. Midday brought a gentle mist curling around jagged stones and distant cliffs. The hero paused on a narrow ledge, observing how the wind shifted the mist and altered the pattern of echoes. Each change offered a subtle lesson: impermanence, attentiveness, and the necessity of flexible yet deliberate action. The Firebird's glow traced arcs of light through the fog, guiding the hero toward areas where echoes revealed patterns that might otherwise go unnoticed. Folklorists note that echo motifs in mythology symbolize introspection, reflection, and the resonance of actions over time, teaching that perception must be both patient and ethically guided. By mid-afternoon, the hero reached a plateau dotted with crystalline stones and small reflective pools. Every surface mirrored the surrounding peaks and the hero's own movements, creating overlapping reflections and subtle visual echoes. The Firebird alighted on a high stone, wings extended, feathers glowing, as if to emphasize the importance of attentive observation. The hero studied the interplay of reflection, light, and echo, learning that wisdom emerges from patient observation and reflective integration of both sensory and emotional awareness. As the afternoon sun moved lower, the climb became more demanding. Winds shifted unpredictably, dislodging small stones and creating faint, shifting echoes that mirrored past steps. The Firebird glided along ridges, illuminating subtle cues for safe footing and careful navigation. Each movement required integration of mindfulness, courage, patience, and ethical engagement. The echoes were not only auditory but metaphorical, reminding the hero that actions and decisions reverberate far beyond immediate perception. Late afternoon brought the hero to a narrow, shadowed gorge. The walls of rock reflected and multiplied every sound, creating an almost hypnotic pattern of echoes that intertwined with the soft glow of the Firebird's feathers. Stepping through required careful attention, steady breath, and reflective composure. Each echo, each subtle flicker of light, reinforced prior lessons: courage tempered by mindfulness, observation intertwined with reflection, and ethical engagement guiding every step. By evening, The hero reached a high ledge overlooking a serene valley below. The echoes of the mountain now seemed distant, softened by space and fading light. The Firebird perched on a jagged rock, wings extended, revealing the sixth glowing feather. The hero approached carefully, recognizing this as the reward for navigating the mountain of echoes. Holding the feather brought a deep sense of accomplishment. The trial had integrated courage, patience, mindfulness, reflection, and ethical engagement into a unified understanding, preparing the hero for the final stages of the journey. Night fell and the mountain was bathed in silver light from the rising moon. Shadows stretched across jagged rocks and narrow ledges, the wind carrying faint whispers from the echoing chambers below. The Firebird remained nearby, feathers glowing softly, casting gentle illumination on stones and moss. The hero settled upon a secure ledge, reflecting on the day's ascent. Careful observation, ethical engagement, patient courage, and mindful reflection had all been exercised fully. The Mountain of Echoes had provided not only physical challenges, but profound lessons in perception, introspection, and understanding. Dreams carried images of jagged peaks, shimmering reflective pools, echoing chambers, and the Firebird's glowing feathers. Every echo, subtle shift of mist, and delicate reflection reinforced lessons learned during the day. The integration of courage, mindfulness, patience, ethical engagement, and reflective observation. Folklorists note that mountain and echo motifs often symbolize higher understanding, introspection, and the resonance of actions over time, emphasizing that wisdom is cultivated through attentive, ethical engagement with both the external world and internal reflection. By the end of the night, the hero's understanding of perception, courage, and reflective attention had deepened further. The Firebird rested atop a high ledge, wings folded gracefully, feathers glowing faintly in the moonlight. The hero reflected on the integration of lessons from the mountain, attentive observation, ethical engagement, mindful courage, and reflective understanding. The Mountain of Echoes had not only tested physical skill, but cultivated profound insight, preparing the hero for the final chapter of the journey. The morning light filtered softly through the high branches, as the hero approached the entrance to the Chamber of Feathers. Hidden within the deepest part of the forest, the chamber was said to hold the culmination of the Firebird's gifts and wisdom. Its entrance was framed by ancient trees, whose roots twisted intricately around one another, forming natural arches and patterns, guiding the hero gently forward. Legends held that only those who had completed previous trials, patience, courage, observation, and ethical engagement, could enter safely. The Firebird hovered above, feathers glowing faintly, signaling readiness and approval. The path into the chamber was narrow and dimly lit, illuminated by shafts of sunlight piercing through the dense canopy above. Each step required careful attention. Loose stones, twisted roots, and soft moss demanded mindfulness and deliberate movement. As the hero progressed, subtle sounds echoed off walls of intertwined branches and moss-covered stones, creating a gentle symphony that reinforced lessons learned from the Mountain of Echoes and the River of Memories. Folklorists note that chambers in mythology often symbolize concentrated wisdom, a place where insight is distilled and internalized, providing reflection on prior experience and preparation for the final stages of a journey. By mid-morning, the hero reached the central chamber, a spacious grove encircled by ancient trees. The ground was carpeted with soft moss and scattered feathers, each shimmering with a subtle red and gold glow. These were no ordinary feathers. Each represented a trial overcome, a virtue cultivated, and a lesson absorbed. The Firebird glided gracefully through the chamber, spreading new feathers across the floor and branches, creating arcs of light that highlighted key patterns and arrangements. Observation, patience, and ethical attention were all essential. The chamber demanded careful study of each feather's placement, color, and glow. The hero moved slowly among the feathers, pausing to examine each with attentive care. Some feathers quivered slightly as though responding to the observer's presence. Others glowed steadily, forming subtle trails across the moss, guiding attention toward hidden symbols carved in the bark of surrounding trees. Courage was tested not in confrontation but in sustained focus. To move too quickly or to ignore subtleties would mean missing the lessons embedded in the chamber's design. Each observation reinforced the integration of virtue, awareness, and reflective understanding cultivated throughout the journey. By midday, the chamber revealed a second layer of complexity. A shallow pool in the center reflected the canopy above, and every feather scattered around it. The Firebird hovered above, occasionally dipping wings into the water to create gentle ripples. These ripples distorted reflections, creating patterns that required patience and mindfulness to interpret accurately. The hero studied the interplay of light, water, and feathers, recognizing that wisdom often lay in subtle interactions, in the spaces between apparent patterns. Folklorists note that water in symbolic chambers often represents reflection, memory, and integration, emphasizing that true understanding emerges from attentive and deliberate observation. As afternoon approached, the hero noticed faint movements among the branches and shadows, a gentle shimmer of light, a delicate flicker of color, and subtle arcs formed by floating feathers. Each required careful attention and reflective engagement. The Firebird guided the hero subtly, illuminating patterns and relationships among feathers, reflections, and shadows. Every observation reinforced lessons in mindfulness, patience, courage, and ethical engagement. The chamber itself seemed alive, responding to careful observation and integration of perception with reflection. Mid-afternoon brought a test of composure and focus. The Firebird created arcs of feathers that moved slowly across the chamber, reflecting light and casting shifting shadows. The hero was asked to follow the paths of these feathers attentively, noting subtle changes in color, trajectory, and interaction with the environment. Courage was required to remain focused, patience to follow the slow arcs without frustration, and ethical mindfulness to respect the natural patterns rather than force interpretation. Every feather, every reflection, and every shadow was an opportunity to practice attentive observation and reflective understanding. By late afternoon, the hero reached the central pool, where a single large feather hovered above the water, glowing intensely with red and gold hues. The Firebird circled above, wings extended in a slow, deliberate motion. The hero approached carefully, understanding that this feather represented the culmination of all lessons learned. Courage tempered by reflection, patience integrated with mindfulness, ethical engagement combined with observation, and the deep insight gained through sustained practice. Taking the feather required complete composure, deliberate attention, and acknowledgement of the journey traveled thus far. Evening descended, and the chamber was bathed in soft golden light, illuminating moss, feathers, and the gentle ripples of the central pool. The Firebird hovered nearby, wings extended, glowing softly, casting a serene and contemplative light across the chamber. The hero rested for a moment, reflecting on the integration of all previous lessons. Every trial, the dance of shadows, the hidden grove, the river of memories, and the mountain of echoes, culminated in this chamber, reinforcing the interdependence of virtue, observation, courage, mindfulness, patience, and ethical reflection. Night fell gradually, and the chamber settled into profound calm. Moonlight filtered through the canopy above, casting silver arcs across moss, water, and feathers. The Firebird alighted on a branch above, wings folded, feathers glowing softly. The hero reflected on the day's experiences, recognizing that the chamber of feathers served both as culmination and preparation. It concentrated the wisdom gained from prior trials and offered guidance for the final stage of the journey. Mindfulness, ethical engagement, courage, patience, and reflective observation had all been exercised fully, preparing the hero for the ultimate lessons yet to come. Dreams carried images of floating feathers, glowing arcs of light, rippling pools, and the Firebird gliding gracefully through the chamber. Each detail reinforced lessons learned: careful observation, reflective patience, ethical engagement, courage in focus, and the integration of insight over time. Folklorists note that chamber motifs in myth frequently symbolize concentrated wisdom, introspection, and the synthesis of previous trials, emphasizing that mastery arises from deliberate, attentive, and ethically guided observation. By the end of the night, the chamber had settled into complete tranquility. The Firebird rested quietly, feathers glowing faintly in the moonlight. The hero reflected on the journey so far, recognizing that the integration of observation, mindfulness, patience, courage, and ethical engagement was now complete. The Chamber of Feathers had crystallized the lessons of all prior trials, preparing the hero for the final stage of the journey, the return to the world, carrying the Firebird's gifts, insights, and wisdom. Dawn arrived softly, casting pale light across the forest floor. The hero rose from the final rest within the Chamber of Feathers, now carrying all 7 glowing feathers carefully in hand. The Firebird hovered nearby, wings extended, radiating a serene light that illuminated the path forward. Legends suggested that returning to the wider world after completing the Firebird's trials was itself a challenge. The traveler had to integrate all lessons, exercise patience, mindfulness, courage, and ethical engagement, and navigate a world that had not paused during their absence. The path out of the forest was familiar yet subtly transformed. Trees that had once seemed ordinary now displayed intricate patterns in bark and leaves. Moss glowed faintly under the morning light, and the wind carried delicate whispers that hinted at lessons previously learned. The Firebird moved gently ahead, glowing feathers scattered along the path, creating soft arcs of light that guided the hero. Each step demanded observation and reflection. The world beyond the forest required the traveler to carry forward the virtues cultivated in seclusion and challenge. By mid-morning, the hero emerged into a valley that seemed simultaneously vast and intimate. The sun filtered through morning mist, illuminating fields, distant villages, and winding rivers. All elements, the landscape, the distant figures, and the flowing water were imbued with subtle lessons. Historians and folklorists suggest that return journeys in myth often reflect the integration of knowledge, virtue, and perception into practical experience. The hero paused to observe the interplay of light, shadow, and human activity, recognizing that mindfulness and ethical awareness were not limited to secluded trials, but required continuous engagement with the broader world. The Firebird flew ahead, then alighted on a high branch, casting its glow over a group of villagers tending fields. The hero approached quietly, watching their routines: planting, harvesting, mending, and conversing. Each detail offered insight into patience, collaboration, and the rhythms of daily life. Courage and mindfulness were necessary, not in confrontation, but in attentive observation, learning to act harmoniously with others and with the environment. Every small action observed reinforced the integration of lessons gained from previous trials, the attentive observation of shadows, reflections, and echoes, the cultivation of patience and courage, and the practice of ethical engagement. By midday, the hero encountered a gently flowing river, its surface shimmering in the afternoon light. Reflections of the forest, the mountains, and the sky overlapped with subtle movements of fish and leaves. The Firebird hovered above, casting arcs of glowing light that revealed intricate patterns in the water. The hero knelt at the riverbank, observing reflections carefully and noting interactions between light, movement, and color. Folklorists note that rivers in return journeys symbolize continuity, integration of wisdom, and the flow of experience into practical understanding. The hero understood that each observation, each reflective pause, and each moment of patience was part of a continuing practice rather than a concluded trial. Late afternoon brought distant hills, shadows lengthening across fields and roads. The hero's pace slowed, attentive to details in terrain, weather, and human activity. The Firebird's guidance remained subtle but consistent, glowing softly above and occasionally dropping a feather as a gentle reminder of virtues to maintain: mindfulness, courage, patience, ethical engagement, and reflective observation. The hero noted that integration of these lessons required constant presence, careful attention, and deliberate action, demonstrating that the journey's trials were preparation for the practical realities of life beyond the forest. As evening approached, the hero arrived at a small village nestled between two gentle hills. The Firebird circled overhead, feathers glowing brightly against the twilight sky. Villagers moved quietly through streets, tending homes, animals, and gardens. The hero observed without intrusion, noting interactions, gestures, and subtleties of daily life. Every movement and conversation carried meaning: patience in speech, ethical engagement in cooperation, courage in honest labor, and reflective attention to social rhythms. The trials of the forest had taught the hero that insight gained in seclusion must be integrated into life within a community. Nightfall arrived gradually, and lanterns were lit along streets and homes. The Firebird alighted atop a central tree in the village square, wings folded, radiating gentle warmth. The hero walked slowly among the villagers, offering help where needed, observing patterns, and reflecting on the integration of wisdom into daily actions. Courage, patience, and ethical mindfulness were now tested in real interactions, where observation alone was insufficient. Each moment demanded deliberate action guided by insight cultivated in the forest's trials. Midnight brought profound calm. The village slept beneath the gentle glow of the moon. Rivers mirrored silver light, and distant forests whispered softly. The hero settled in a quiet courtyard, reflecting on the journey, the dance of shadows, the hidden grove, the river of memories, the mountain of echoes, and the chamber of feathers. Each trial had cultivated virtues essential for navigating the complexities of life: attentive observation, ethical engagement, patience, courage, and reflective mindfulness. The Firebird perched nearby, glowing faintly, a reminder that mastery is ongoing, not a final state, and that the integration of lessons requires continual practice. Dreams carried images of glowing feathers, reflective pools, echoing chambers, and flowing rivers, interwoven with gentle human activity and natural rhythms. Each dream reinforced the practice of attentive observation, patient reflection, courageous ethical action, and integration of insight into the wider world. Folklorists and storytellers suggest that return journeys symbolize the continuation of learning, the application of wisdom, and the integration of virtue into daily life, emphasizing that mastery is lived, not merely achieved. By dawn, the hero had fully integrated lessons from the Firebird's journey. Observation, courage, patience, ethical engagement, and reflective mindfulness were no longer exercises but guiding principles. The Firebird took flight, circling once above the village before disappearing into the horizon, leaving the hero with all 7 feathers and the knowledge that the path forward would be guided by insight, vigilance, and careful, deliberate action. The journey had transformed the hero not only in skill but in perception, understanding, and ethical integration. The forest and village lay in gentle quiet, illuminated by soft morning light. The hero walked along familiar paths, observing, reflecting, and integrating. Each step demonstrated patience, mindfulness, courage, and ethical engagement. The Firebird's lessons, symbolized by glowing feathers, flowing rivers, echoing chambers, and reflective pools, remained embedded in the hero's awareness. Life beyond the forest required continuous practice, but the hero now possessed the insight and virtue necessary to navigate challenges, guide others, and live in harmonious alignment with the world and its rhythms. Evening returned, soft and calm, and the hero rested beneath a tree near the river. The gentle glow of the Firebird's feathers reflected in the water. Reflection, observation, courage, patience, and ethical engagement had been fully exercised and integrated. The hero now understood that the journey with the Firebird was both a literal adventure and a lifelong practice. Wisdom, virtue, and attentive presence were cultivated through deliberate engagement with the world and careful reflection upon experience. Night fell completely, and the village slept beneath a blanket of stars. The Firebird glided silently overhead, feathers glowing faintly, a quiet sentinel and reminder of lessons learned. The hero settled, holding all 7 feathers, reflecting on a journey that had spanned forests, rivers, mountains, and mystical chambers. The integration of insight, virtue, and mindfulness prepared the hero not only to survive but to thrive, observing life with patient awareness, ethical engagement, courage, and reflective understanding.